Chapter 826. This time, Gu Xingyin knew the way and accurately found Yuan Xiu's house. Yuan Xiu was chanting Buddhist scriptures as usual when someone knocked lightly on the door. At first, he thought it was a disciple from the sect looking for him and was wondering why the other party didn't say anything. Then, he saw the door open a crack and a small white figure squeezed in. He was surprised and delighted. Benefactor Little Fox. Gu Xingyin paused when she heard this name. Being called Benefactor Little Fox was really not nice. She huffed and puffed as she ran to Yuan Xiu's side. Then, she climbed up his thighs with familiarity. Yuan Xiu smiled as he watched her act of not being shy with strangers. Then, Gu Xingyin once again struggled to bite the pen. With the movement of the pen tip, the two crooked words, Qing Bo, finally took shape. Qing Bo. Yuan Xiu softly read it twice and looked at Gu Xingyin. Is this your name? Gu Xingyin nodded her head vigorously. Yuan Xiu looked at her pair of watery eyes and couldn't help but reach out his hand to touch them. I wonder who gave you such a name. He muttered in a low voice. Gu Xingyin blinked her eyes. No one gave her a name. From the moment she could remember, she knew that she was called Qing Bo. Yuan Xiu looked at Gu Xingyin with a complicated expression. Of course, he knew that it was impossible for ordinary beasts to enter Lotus City. Even if there was, it couldn't be this little fox. With just one look, Yuan Xiu knew that this was a demonic beast that hadn't grown up yet. To be able to enter Lotus City, one must have been recognized by the Lotus Platform sect. But logically speaking, it was not good for him to get close to this little fellow. After all, although the little fox had not transformed, her intelligence was no different from that of an ordinary child. Benefactor Little Fox was just like a little girl. How could he, a monk, have the nerve to get close to her? But looking at Gu Xingyin lying softly on her body with a look of dependence, Yuan Xiu felt that she was thinking too much. Qing Bo was just a human child. What could she know? As long as his mind was calm, why would he bother to be disturbed by these factors? Therefore, he convinced himself to keep Gu Xingyin by his side. Gu Xingyin liked the feeling of watching him quietly as his lover. Not long after, all the disciples of the Lotus Platform sect knew that there was an extremely beautiful and intelligent little fox by martial uncle Yuan Xiu's side. That little fox was not raised by martial uncle Yuan Xiu. Instead, it ran over from the outside. Every time martial uncle Yuan Xiu meditated and chanted, she would lie there to accompany him. Occasionally, she would shake her head along with the sound of the wooden fish, as if she could understand it. Gu Xingyin quickly won the hearts of all the disciples of the Lotus Platform sect. The world was more tolerant of beautiful things. Not to mention, Gu Xingyin's current appearance was not only beautiful, but also very innocent and harmless. Gu Xingyin also learned a lot about her lover during this period of time. For example, although Yuan Xiu was young, he was the disciple of the Lotus Platform sect's guardian elder, Venerable Jing Ming. Venerable Jing Ming's seniority was one generation higher than the sect master, Venerable Yuanda. Therefore, Yuan Xiu's status in the Lotus Platform sect was considered to be extraordinary. Yuan Xiu's comprehension of Buddhism was also extremely high. Even the sect master, Venerable Yuanda, personally admitted that in terms of comprehension, he could not compare to this little junior brother. However, no one knew why martial uncle Yuan Xiu had not shaved his head for so many years even though he lived in the Lotus Platform sect. Therefore, strictly speaking, Yuan Xiu was not a true monk. He could only be considered a lay disciple of Buddhism. Chapter 827. After Yuan Xiu finished his evening lesson, he packed up and walked out of the door. The Lotus Pedestal sect was very quiet at night. The Buddhist disciples usually had a good schedule and most of them were ready to sleep at this time. Yuan Xiu came to the door of his master, Venerable Jing Ming's room. Master. The door was opened and Yuan Xiu walked in. Venerable Jingming sat on a praying mat. There was another praying mat in front of him. Yuan Shou went forward and sat down. Master, can I shave my head? Yuan Shou did not know how many times he had asked this question. Venerable Jingming was thin and his face was very peaceful. He looked at his little disciple lovingly. He was also the disciple that he was most satisfied with and worried about. Yuan Shou, I've told you before that you're not suitable to cultivate Buddhism. You have the roots of love that have lasted for many generations. In every lifetime, there must be someone who loves you wholeheartedly waiting for you. It's not necessarily a good thing to enter Buddhism. Yuan Shou's expression did not change. But Master, after so many years, I've never met anyone who's moved my heart. Venerable Jingming said, you have the roots of wisdom and amazing talent. That's why I couldn't bear to see your talent buried, so I brought you to the Lotus Pedestal sect. However, I can't let you shave your head. Yuan Shou looked at him with his eyes wide open. Venerable Jingming sighed. If you shave your head, your six senses will really be pure in the future and you'll be cut off from the mortal world. We Buddhists pay attention to fate. We can't be evil people who ruin marriage. Yuan Shou laughed softly. Only Master, and only the Lotus Pedestal sect, would say something like that to me. If it were any other Buddhist sect, they would have brought such a talented bodhisattva back to the sect immediately to shave his head and make him a monk who serves Buddha wholeheartedly. Venerable Jingming put his palms together and chanted Amitabha. Those who walk different paths cannot work together. The Lotus Pedestal sect has its own principles of doing things. Yuan Shou also chanted Buddha's name in a low voice. He saw that his master had already closed his eyes and left with his head lowered. After Yuan Shou left, Venerable Jingming's tightly shut eyes opened. He looked worriedly in the direction of his disciple's departure and muttered, you don't just have the roots of love. In this life, I'm afraid there will be a love tribulation. The next day, when Gu Xingyin arrived at the Lotus Pedestal sect, she did not discover that Yuan Shou was different from usual. She continued to lie beside him, watching him meditate, recite sutras, and recite the Dharma. To Gu Xingyin, these things were really boring. She didn't know how he was able to recite them day after day. However, Gu Xingyin tilted his head and looked at Yuan Shou's delicate and soft side profile. His little monk was so good-looking. Sure enough, he looked better with his hair. Although she did not know why Yuan Shou had not shaved her head, Gu Xingyin was happy about it. It was good that she did not shave her head. If she did not shave her head, she would not be a real Buddhist disciple. When the time came, it would not be considered a violation of the precepts. Yuan Shou tilted her head and saw the little fox staring at her without blinking. He wondered what he would be like in a fox's world. He laughed at his strange thought. However, his mind was attracted by that pair of green eyes. What a beautiful pair of eyes. He wondered what Qingbo would look like after she took human form. A woman with such a pair of beautiful eyes must be a beautiful woman, right? Chapter 828. His heart was suddenly in a mess. He recalled what his master, Venerable Jingming, had said to him last night, in your body, there are roots of love that have been planted for many generations. In this lifetime, there will definitely be someone who loves you wholeheartedly waiting for you. What would she look like if there was someone who loves her wholeheartedly? His heart, which had always been calm like an ancient well, was thrown into chaos just like that. When Yuan Shou realized what he was thinking, he hurriedly lowered his head and chanted the name of Buddha several times. It seemed that his state of mind was still not calm enough. He had actually been provoked by this kind of thing. He suddenly didn't dare to look into Gu Xingyin's eyes. Right now, Qingbo was just like a child. How could he associate her with that kind of thing? He forced himself to remain calm and turned to speak to Gu Xingyin. Qingbo, I have something to do. Can you go back first today? Gu Xingyin was somewhat puzzled. She called out to Yuan Shou in confusion. After so many days of interaction, Yuan Xiao could basically understand the meaning behind her call. Only this time, Yuan Xiao didn't know how to explain it to her. Seeing the little white fox standing there with a puzzled expression and unwilling to leave, he stretched out his sleeve. Gu Xingyin only felt a gentle breeze blowing over her body. Then, in the next second, she was standing outside the door. Yuan Xiao's door was already tightly shut. Gu Xingyin was dumbfounded. Alright, could something really have happened to him? Gu Xingyin wasn't really a child. She wouldn't get angry because of this and obediently ran back. She would go see what was wrong with him tomorrow. Gu Xingyin thought so. However, she didn't go to the lotus pedestal sect the next day. The reason was that this body seemed to be about to awaken. She slept in a daze at night. Suddenly, her body began to heat up. Was this about the time of the 100-year awakening? Gu Xingyin immediately woke up. Chaotic spiritual energy was scattered in the room. Yun Shu and Bodhi Nanny were also startled awake. Yun Shu looked worriedly at the situation in front of him. Qingba, what's going on? Bodhi Nanny was, after all, experienced and knowledgeable. She roughly understood what was going on. She pulled back Yun Shu, who was about to rush forward in a panic. She's about to transform. Don't rush forward. Transformation. Yun Shu's eyes lit up. However, Bodhi Granny frowned. The commotion in front of her seemed a little too big. Was such a violent spiritual energy really something that a little demon who had just transformed could possess? She had never been able to tell what Qing Bo's bloodline was. She had even guessed that it was the powerful six-tailed fox bloodline of the fox race, but at this moment, she was unsure. At the next moment, a stream of white light flew out from Gu Xingyin's body, forming a phantom image in midair. Bodhi Granny's eyes suddenly widened. At the same time, the sound of rolling thunder came from the sky. Bodhi Granny made a prompt decision. Her figure flashed, and in this small courtyard, a huge Bodhi tree that was more than 100 feet tall broke out of the ground. At the same time, a misty green halo scattered from the Bodhi tree, forming a translucent light shield that protected the entire courtyard. Boom! The huge thunderbolt landed on the light shield. There seemed to be ripples on the light shield, but it remained majestic and unmoving. Bodhi Granny, who had reverted to her original form, was still holding Yun Shu's hand. She looked at the phantom image that emerged from Gu Xingyin's body in shock. She didn't expect that Qing Bo's bloodline was not the six-tailed fox she had imagined. Instead, it was one of the most noble bloodlines of the demon race, the nine-tailed celestial fox bloodline that only existed in legends. Chapter 829. The nine-tailed celestial fox was another name for the nine-tailed Arctic fox. It was also the demon clan's honorific for the nine-tailed Arctic fox. The figure in the air was the nine-tailed Arctic fox's Dharma form. Her body quietly stopped in mid-air, and the 9 huge fluffy tails behind her slowly danced. The little white fox on the bed suddenly let out a pained cry. At the same time, the figure trembled slightly, and the eyes that had been tightly shut suddenly opened. When Bodhi Granny met those eyes, her body couldn't help but tremble. She forcibly suppressed the urge to kneel and lowered her head to look at Yun Shu, whose face had already turned pale. A wave of vital essence was transmitted through their clasped hands, and Yun Shu's complexion finally looked better. The nine-tailed Arctic fox had the same jade eyes as the little white fox on the bed. However, Qing Bo's eyes were incomparably beautiful. However, this pair of jade eyes was extremely beautiful, and contained endless loftiness and allure. One look was enough to make people sink. Bodhi Granny felt that if she hadn't been immersed in the Dharma all year round, she was afraid that she would have fallen for such a pair of eyes. Her hands that were hidden in her sleeves had already secretly formed a seal. This was her body's automatic reaction when facing a powerful opponent. At the same time, many people in Lotus City were attracted by the abnormal astronomical phenomenon. When they saw where the phenomenon came from and saw Bodhi Granny's true body revealed, they all expressed their understanding. Bodhi Granny's cultivation has improved again, right? I see that the thunderbolt is very powerful. Bodhi Granny must have a great breakthrough. Many people had envious looks on their faces as they sighed. This was also the reason why Bodhi Granny had released her true body at the first moment. She had many ways to resist the power of the thunderbolt, but she had chosen the method that consumed the most vital essence. Although the nine-tailed Arctic fox was the demon clan's supreme bloodline, not all demon clans were willing to have such a king appear out of nowhere. Before Qing Bo had enough power to protect herself, it was best not to expose her identity in front of others. The pressure in the room grew stronger and stronger. Even with Bodhi Granny's protection, Yun Shu's face was already abnormally red. After all, she was too young and her cultivation was too weak. The pressure of the nine-tailed Arctic fox's bloodline, even if it was just an illusory image, was not something she could withstand. At this moment, the white fox's 9 huge tails, and the leftmost tail slowly solidified. Bodhi Granny moved her hand, and Yun Shu's figure disappeared from the room. In the next moment, she appeared under the tall Bodhi tree in the courtyard. A Bodhi tree emitted a green halo, silently protecting her. In the room, Bodhi Granny quietly watched the white fox condense the first of its 9 tails. The 9-tailed Arctic fox's Arctic fox Dharma was, and the 9-tailed white Arctic fox's Arctic fox's Arctic fox's Dharma, and Arctic fox white Arctic fox's white Arctic fox white. At the same time, the little white fox's body gradually changed. Its small body gradually elongated, and the figure of an adult woman appeared in front of Bodhi Granny's eyes. Looking at that face and those eyes, even Bodhi Granny couldn't help but gasp. Looking back with a smile, she was a beauty that could cause the fall of a city. No wonder, no matter what kind of rumors, the 9-tailed Arctic fox was a femme fatale who could bring disaster to the world. Chapter 830. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and suddenly realized that her body had changed. She raised her left hand and saw a flawless human palm that was as white as jade. Did she transform? Gu Xingyin looked at Bodhi Granny, who was standing at the side and looking at her with a complicated expression. She stood up and bowed to her. Thank you, Granny, for covering Qing Bo up. Although she had been lying on the bed, a trace of her consciousness had been attached to her Dharma form. Naturally, she had seen Bodhi Granny release her true form to conceal her from the heavens. However, Bodhi Granny had turned sideways to avoid this bow. Miss Qing Bo, no one in the demon clan can accept this bow of yours. Bodhi Granny's words were sincere. The demon clan valued their bloodline. As a 9-tailed Arctic fox, Qing Bo was fully deserving of the title of Highness in the demon clan. After saying that, she paused for a moment and looked at Gu Xingyin seriously. But Miss Qing Bo, it's best that you don't reveal your identity now. Gu Xingyin knew that Bodhi Granny was sincerely thinking for her sake. She nodded and thanked her again. Bodhi Granny saw that she was fine and said, "My true form has attracted a lot of attention. Since you're fine, I'll take it back." Yun Shu only ran in after the huge Bodhi tree disappeared from the courtyard. She was stunned when she saw Gu Xingyin. Qing Bo. You're so beautiful. She was prettier than all the demons and humans she had ever seen combined. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but smile when she heard this simple and straightforward praise. Her face could be said to be extremely beautiful. When she smiled, it was as if 100 flowers had bloomed. Yun Shu's attention, which had just been pulled back with great difficulty, was once again attracted by her. Yun Shu only felt that Qing Bo's melting technique seemed to have a strange charm. She couldn't help what? She only stared blankly at Gu Xingyin without saying a word. Bodhi Granny sighed helplessly and raised her hand to gently pat Yun Shu's head. Then he turned to Gu Xingyin and said, "Miss, you've just transformed, so I'm afraid you won't be able to control the natural charm of the 9-tailed Arctic fox. It's best that you don't go out for the next few days. Wait until you've familiarized yourself with the changes in your body and can control yourself before going out. Otherwise, it would cause a lot of trouble. Gu Xingyin also noticed that something was wrong with her. She nodded and said, "Don't worry, Nanny. I know what to do." Yun Shu was still staring blankly at Gu Xingyin as she stood up and walked towards the door. Her white dress was automatically transformed when she transformed. It was hard to tell what style it was, but Yun Shu felt that it was very elegant and beautiful. But this was nothing compared to the way she walked. The wind blew the willows, and the willows swayed in the wind. For some reason, Yun Shu recalled a few scripts she had read when she was in that small human town. Her delicate steps were incomparably exquisite. In the past, she couldn't imagine what it would be like until she saw Qingbo today. Gu Xingyin had been staying in the courtyard for the past few days. Bodhi Granny was right. She had just transformed, so she couldn't control the natural charm of the nine-tailed Arctic fox. When she saw Yun Shu unconsciously being affected by her own aura, she knew. At the very least, she had to be able to control it freely before she could go out. Otherwise, as Bodhi Granny said, it would cause bad consequences. In addition, after her awakening, the unique cultivation method of the nine-tailed Arctic fox clan appeared in her mind. She had to organize it properly. Chapter 831. By the time Gu Xingyin came out of her little seclusion, 10 days had already passed. She pushed open the door to the courtyard and Yun Shu ran over immediately. She looked at Qingbo. Qingbo was still so good-looking. However, the feeling that made people unable to control themselves when they saw him was gone. Bodhi Nanny did not expect Gu Xingyin to come out so quickly. She thought that Gu Xingyin would take at least a month. Was she really a nine-tailed Arctic fox? How could his talent be so shocking? Gu Xingyin felt that she had only sat for a while and 10 days had passed. Time passed so quickly that it was frightening. She really wanted to see Yuan Shou now. She had not gone to look for him for 10 days. Would he be worried? No, Buddhist cultivators had always been indifferent. She did not know if he still remembered her. Gu Xingyin thought for a while. After saying a few words to Yun Shu and Bodhi Granny, she turned back into a little white fox and walked on the familiar path. Yun Shu did not feel that anything was wrong, but Bodhi Granny was stunned when she heard that Gu Xingyin was going to the Lotus Pedestal sect to look for a little monk. She had a deep relationship with the Lotus Pedestal sect and could be considered half a guardian. Naturally, she knew some things very well. For example, Venerable Jing Ming's disciple, Yuan Shou, had not shaved his head because he was not pure of love. Now that a nine-tailed Arctic fox had turned into Qingbo and ran into the Lotus Pedestal sect, she could not help but think. With Qingbo's appearance, even a naturally emotionless Buddha would not be able to remain unmoved, right? She was in a daze for a long time before she finally sighed. It was all fate. What was the use of thinking so much? Lotus Pedestal sect. Yuan Shou was meditating in his room. The wooden fish was knocked again and again, but his heart was not as calm as usual. 10 days. Today was the 11th day. Benefactor Little Fox had not appeared outside his room for 10 whole days. That day, he sent Benefactor Little Fox away because his heart was in a mess. Demons were all sentient, so was the little fox benefactor angry? She was angry, so, she didn't want to talk to him anymore. Did that mean that she would never come back again? The sound of the wooden fish, which had been steadily striking in the room, suddenly became disordered, just like Yuan Shou's flawless state of mind. The door was suddenly knocked a few times. The sound of the wooden fish stopped. Yuan Shou could recognize this voice. The disciples of the sect would not knock on the door like this. He slowly turned his head, and the door just happened to open a crack. A familiar white ball squeezed in. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw the smile on Yuan Shou's face. It was like a gentle breeze blowing through the clear water, creating a circle of gentle ripples. Benefactor little fox, you're here. It was as if those 10 days had never appeared. Every time Gu Xingyin appeared, she would appear. Yuan Shou greeted her with a smile. He knew that her name was Qin Bo, but he always liked to call her little fox benefactor. Little monk, I'm much older than you. You have no respect for your elders. Gu Xingyin snorted softly. Yuan Shou was stunned by the sweet and crisp voice. He looked at Gu Xingyin carefully and said, "Congratulations, benefactor little fox." Gu Xingyin snorted. "I told you that my name is Qin Bo, don't call me little fox." Yuan Shou readily followed her advice. Benefactor Qin Bo, this little monk's Buddhist name is Yuan Shou. So, don't call him little monk. Gu Xingyin understood what he meant. Seeing that he was still studying the Buddhist Dharma, he walked to his side, leaped lightly, and lay on top of him. This time, Yuan Shou's body froze for a moment. Chapter 832. He knew that something was different. In the past, the little fox, benefactor Qin Bo, had gained intelligence but could not speak. He could still tell himself to treat her purely as a sentient animal. But now, benefactor Qin Bo had obviously made a great breakthrough and could speak. She should be able to successfully transform in the future. Listening to her soft and sweet voice, she was obviously a girl. But now, she was still lying on top of him as usual. Wasn't that a little wrong? Yuan Shou was a little distressed. It seemed that he should avoid it. Gu Xingyin certainly sensed the change in him and could roughly guess what he was thinking. This was also the reason why she did not tell him that she could transform into a human. Although she did not shave, Yuan Shou had cultivated the habits of a Buddhist disciple in the Lotus Platform sect. If he knew that she could transform into a girl, he would definitely not dare to let her get close to him. How could Gu Xingyin allow this to happen? She said lazily, "Yuan Shou, are you feeling very uncomfortable right now?" Yuan Shou didn't expect Gu Xingyin to be so direct. He put his palms together and chanted a Buddhist mantra in a low voice. Benefactor Qingbo, there are clear rules in Buddhism. Our disciples are not allowed to get close to women. Gu Xingyin interrupted him, "Can I be considered a woman in my current form?" Yuan Shou answered instinctively, "Benefactor Qingbo, you should be able to transform in no time." Gu Xingyin yawned lazily and said, "I'm just a straight white fox. You can just treat me as a fox too." Buddhist disciple, you are so pretentious. Was this how pretentious was used? Yuan Shou did not know whether to laugh or cry. But after thinking for a while, he lowered his head and said, "Amitabha, benefactor Qin Bo is very right. I have learned from you." He would just treat benefactor Qin Bo as a little fox. On this day, with Gu Xingyin's company, Yuan Shou practiced Buddhism for a whole day without any distracting thoughts. Before Gu Xingyin left at night, she hesitated for a moment and said to Yuan Shou, "Yuan Shou, I might not be able to come every day in the future. Don't be surprised if you don't see me." She was about to officially start cultivating and couldn't be as idle as before. The smile on Yuan Shou's lips froze for a moment before she revealed an even gentler smile. "I understand, benefactor Qingbo." Gu Xingyin glanced at him again. She seemed to be afraid that he would think too much and said, "But don't worry, Yuan Shou. Even if I can't come every day, I will still think of you. You're so pretty. You're my favorite." Yuan Shou couldn't help but laugh out loud. She nodded again. "I understand, benefactor Qingbo." He watched as the white ball walked further and further away until it disappeared from his sight. He closed the door and sat down again. In front of him was a line of words on the Buddhist scripture. Saraira, form is not different from emptiness, emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. He gently closed his eyes and recited the words silently. He ignored the trace of delusion in his heart. Gu Xingyin walked out of the Lotus Pedestal sect in a good mood. The words she said before she left were no doubt said deliberately for Yuan Shou to hear. As an active and passionate demon, how could she be reserved in front of the person she liked? If it wasn't for the fact that she was afraid of scaring the pure and simple little monk, she would have said something even more explicit. Forget it, let's take it slow. After all, the little monk couldn't run away. Chapter 833. Gu Xingyin was right. She began to run out of time. She had to work hard to cultivate and improve her strength as soon as possible. Although it was very safe in Lotus City, she couldn't stay here for the rest of her life and wait for death, could she? She was a nine-tailed Arctic fox, born with a noble bloodline. It didn't allow her to be a cowardly demon. In the demon clan, one's bloodline determined one's strength. After her awakening, there was the most suitable cultivation method for the nine-tailed Arctic fox clan in her inherited memory. Unlike the human clan, who had barriers in every small realm, she could reach the highest realm without any bottlenecks and ascend to become an immortal as long as she continued to cultivate. Although Gu Xingyin missed her lover, she had never forgotten the big threat of the heartless nun. As long as she was around, the demon clan, especially those ordinary demons with average strength, had to live in fear all day long. Gu Xingyin once asked the system why the demon clan's powerful figures didn't kill the heartless nun. The system's answer made him sigh. The demon clan was not united. There were powerful demons, but they each occupied one side and were wary of each other. The heartless nun was powerful and had many treasures on her. It would take a lot of effort to kill her, and it was likely that they would face the crazy revenge of the Water Moon sect. Moreover, the demon clan was cold-blooded. Those demons with noble bloodlines didn't have any feelings for their fellow demons who died at the hands of the heartless nun. No one was willing to take a big risk to kill her as long as it didn't infringe on their interests. Gu Xingyin sneered. They were overcautious, selfish, without courage, and in a state of disunity. This was the reason why there hadn't been a unified demon king in the demon clan for so many years. This was also the reason why the demon clan had been suppressed by the human clan even though they had a natural talent, bloodline, and lifespan advantage over the human clan. She retracted her thoughts. These were still too far away from her current self. The more time she spent on cultivation, the less time she had to find Yuan Shou. Yuan Shou found that his heart couldn't calm down. Every morning, after his morning class, he would prick up his ears and listen to the door to see if there was that familiar knocking sound. If not, he would sit quietly on the futon for a while, and then silently begin to cultivate. His dharma did not fall, but his state of mind was no longer as pure as before. Yuan Shou knew that a little fox had quietly crawled onto her originally clear and empty spiritual altar. After the morning class, the little white ball came to his room as promised. He would smile and greet her. Then, the two of them would have a tacit understanding. One of them would silently cultivate dharma, while the other would lie on top of him and sleep. Or, she would look at him with her mysterious and beautiful eyes. The emotions of the demon race were usually passionate and straightforward. From time to time, Benefactor Qin Bo would say things like, "Yuan Shou, you're so pretty, I like you the most," and so on. At first, Yuan Shou would feel a little uncomfortable or embarrassed from being teased. But now, he could easily reply, "Yuan Shou's whole body can't compare to Benefactor Qin Bo's pair of eyes." His words were meant to refute, but they were also sincere. Benefactor Qin Bo's pair of eyes was indeed the most beautiful pair of eyes he had ever seen in his life. Chapter 834. Benefactor Qin Bo had not been here for half a month. Yuan Shou looked at the scriptures in front of him and sighed inwardly. Even though he had mentioned it before, Benefactor Qin Bo had only been away for 5 days at most. He did not know what had happened to her. Venerable Jing Ming had looked for Yuan Shou once. Your heart is in a mess. Venerable Jing Ming said to him. Yuan Shou admitted without hesitation, this disciple's heart is not calm. Venerable Jing Ming did not ask for the reason. He had always allowed this disciple of his to decide the path he wanted to take in the future. He could resolve his doubts countless times, but he could not decide the path he wanted to take in the future. Moreover, this disciple was not supposed to be a Buddhist in the first place. Yuan Shou walked out of his room and looked up at the moon in the sky. It was close to the middle of the moon. The moon was very far away, and a hazy layer of clear moonlight spilled over the courtyard. He could not help but think that if this gentle moonlight shone on Qing Bo's body, it would definitely look very beautiful with her snow-white and flawless fur. In Bodhi Nanny's small courtyard, Gu Xingyin finally opened her eyes. After her pair of dark green eyes opened, they slowly turned into the black of an ordinary person's eyes. She pushed open the window and saw the big round moon outside at a glance. Before she went into seclusion, it was still a crescent moon. She finally understood the saying that cultivation had no concept of time. Bang! Yun Shu excitedly pushed open the door to her room. Gu Xingyin looked at her in surprise. Yun Shu was usually gentle and quiet. Why was she so happy today? Yun Shu looked at Gu Xingyin and said, Qing Bo, tomorrow is the day of the Moon Lantern Festival. Bodhi Nanny said that she allowed me to go out and play. Looking at Yun Shu's sparkling eyes, Gu Xingyin could not help but laugh. Unlike her, Bodhi Nanny looked gentle, but she was very strict with Yun Shu. She usually restrained her to cultivate properly and did not let her take a single step outside. Every time this little girl saw her return from outside, her face would be filled with envy. Moon Lantern Festival. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. The next day, Gu Xingyin accompanied Yun Shu to play outside during the day. However, the most fun part of the Lantern Festival was at night. Unfortunately, Gu Xingyin could not accompany Yun Shu. Have fun by yourself. I have something to do. To avoid attracting attention, Gu Xingyin did not even transform into her human form. Instead, she remained in her fox form and allowed Yun Shu to carry her. Yun Shu expressed her understanding. If Qing Bo were to transform into a human, the people on the street would probably not look at the lanterns anymore. Hearing Gu Xingyin say that she was leaving, Yun Shu was obviously a little disappointed. However, she had always been considerate and didn't say much. Her little appearance made Gu Xingyin feel pity for her. She reached out to rub Yun Shu's head and said, I'll personally talk to Bodhi Nanny another day and bring you out to play for a day. How about that? Yun Shu's eyes lit up when she heard this, but she still shook her head. I think it's better. Nanny said that I have to cultivate properly so that I won't be a burden to you in the future. How could she be so obedient and cute? Gu Xingyin had no resistance to this kind of little girl. She said to Yun Shu, cultivation can't be rushed. It's settled then. I'll talk to Bodhi Nanny. She looked at the sky and knew that it was time for her to leave. Otherwise, Yuan Shou would be having dinner and preparing for her evening class. Gu Xingyin said goodbye to Yun Shu and ran towards the Lotus Pedestal sect. She arrived just in time. Yuan Shou had just finished dinner and was preparing for her evening class. Yuan Shou. A clear and pleasant voice came from outside the door. Gu Xingyin did not knock this time. Yuan Shou paused. Was she hallucinating? Why did she hear Benefactor Qing Bo's voice at this time? Chapter 835. Yuan Shou. Gu Xingyin didn't hear a reply from inside and thought that there was no one inside. She stretched out her hand and was about to push the door open. Unexpectedly, the door opened from the inside. Yuan Shou stood at the door and looked at her in surprise. Benefactor Qingba, why are you? Why did you come over at this time? Gu Xingyin jumped into his arms easily. Yuan Shou hugged her out of reflex. Today is a good day. I came out especially to play with you. Yuan Shio counted the days and suddenly realized that today was the annual Lunar Lantern Festival. He was a little embarrassed. Benefactor Qingba, I still have evening classes to do. Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand and patted his arm gently. You can always take a break once a year, right? I have never seen what the Lunar Lantern Festival is like. I heard from others that the Lantern Festival is for the people you like the most. That's why I'm here to look for you. Benefactor Qingba. Even though he was used to Gu Xingyin's confession, from time to time, Yuan Shio's face couldn't help but blush when he heard such words at this time. Gu Xingyin loved to see him like this. It was really rare to see such a gentle and innocent lover. She purposely added, if you're still unwilling, I'll find someone else. Before she could finish her sentence, she felt the arm that was hugging her tighten. Yuan Shio's gentle voice came from above. Benefactor Qingba, please allow me to change my clothes. Change his clothes. Gu Xingyin was put down. She was ready to admire the picture of a handsome man taking off his clothes with great interest. However, Yuan Shio didn't move for a long time. Gu Xingyin was puzzled. Yuan Shio looked at the little white fox's eyes and said helplessly, Benefactor Qingba, can you please turn around? Gu Xingyin pretended not to hear. She seemed to hear Yuan Shio sigh. Then, a green cloud fell from the sky and covered Gu Xingyin completely. It was Yuan Shio's green monk robe. There was a very light sandalwood scent on his clothes, which was different from the lotus scent on Yuan Shio's body. This was the scent of his body. It was as if that lotus fragrance would only appear on his body. As for other things, even the most intimate clothing, they would not be tainted in the slightest. Gu Xingyin didn't dislike the smell. On the contrary, she felt that it was easy to fall asleep just by smelling it. However, the current situation still annoyed her. Because she was covered by a piece of cloth, she couldn't see anything. Not only did she fail to get out, but she also often tripped over herself. When Gu Xingyin finally realized that she was not a real fox, but a demon who knew magic, Yuan Shio had already taken the monk's robe off her body. This is an urgent matter. Benefactor Qingba, I apologize for offending you just now. Yuan Shio's face was full of apology. Gu Xingyin did not pay attention to this. She raised her head and looked at Yuan Shio, who had changed into ordinary clothes. He took off his monk's robe and changed into a blue robe. It wasn't made of expensive material, but when he wore it, it gave him a leisurely demeanor. His unshaven hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. A few strands of hair casually fell to the side of his face, adding a touch of elegance to his jade-like face. Some people needed to use luxurious clothes to show their charm, while others could wear ordinary clothes to show the bearing of a prince. Yuan Shio was the latter. Chapter 836. Yuan Shio, who had taken off his monk robe, looked less otherworldly, but the advantage of his appearance was fully displayed. Gu Xingyin clicked his tongue in admiration. My foresight is indeed not bad. Yuan Shio, if you go out dressed like this, you should be able to receive many lanterns from girls tonight. The Moon Lantern Festival was also a day for lovers to express their feelings. If a girl saw a man she liked, she could naturally pass the lantern in her hand to him. If that person accepted it, it would mean that they were in love with each other, and it would be a golden wind in Jade-Du meeting. Yuan Shio did not speak but bent down to carry Gu Xingyin. Along the way, many novice monks saw Yuan Shio's dressing and were amazed. However, they did not ask too much. This martial uncle had not shaved his head and was naturally different from them. Yuan Shio carried Gu Xingyin all the way out of Lotus Pedestal sect and walked to the street outside. The sky had already darkened, but Lotus City tonight was more lively and bright than during the day. Countless lanterns were on the roofs of the buildings, on the treetops by the roadside, and in the hands of the tourists, turning Lotus City into a city of lights that night. Gu Xingyin was right. Even if Yuan Xiu's dressing was not outstanding, his handsome and otherworldly charm still attracted the attention of countless girls. Many beautiful girls shyly passed the lanterns in their hands to him, but they were all politely rejected by him. Gu Xingyin could not help but tease, "Yuan Xiu, there are so many beautiful girls, but you're not moved by any of them?" Yuan Xiu retracted his gaze from the bright lights in the distance and looked down at the little fox in his arms. "Yuan Xiu is just a monk, how can I have such thoughts?" Gu Xingyin did not comment. "Don't lie to me. You obviously have not shaved your head and received your precepts, how can you be considered a monk?" Logically speaking, Yuan Xiu had never been able to win against this little fox benefactor who had a sharp tongue. Hearing this, he only chuckled, "That's because this little monk's mortal heart has yet to find someone who can move it." Gu Xingyin did not speak anymore. She laid lazily in Yuan Xiu's arms, instructing him to look for places with many people. Yuan Xiu had never experienced such a lively scene before, so she wasn't used to it. However, he didn't say anything and just followed Gu Xingyin's instructions. "Don't you find it annoying?" Gu Xingyin asked. "I can see that you'd rather stay in your room and knock on the wooden fish." Yuan Xiu shook her head. "It's a novel feeling to come out and take a look occasionally." He really didn't like this kind of noisy environment, but when he saw the little fox in his arms looking at him with interest, he felt his heart was at peace. Since he had come out with the little fox, of course he had to be happy. Gu Xingyin suddenly said, "I remember there's a clear pond over there. It's full of lotus flowers. Let's go there and have a look." Yuan Xiu looked in the direction she was pointing at. It was dark and gloomy. It was obviously not lively there at all. Even the lanterns were much fewer than in other places. As long as the little fox was happy, it was fine. He walked in that direction. The place was very quiet. There was a pavilion beside the clear pond. 2 lanterns were hung at the corner of the pavilion, providing the only light in the place. The night breeze brought with it the unique fragrance of lotus flowers. Yuan Xiu only felt relaxed and happy. He didn't know why there was no one in such a wonderful place. "Close your eyes," Gu Xingyin suddenly said. Chapter 837. Yuan Xiu didn't know what the little fox wanted to do, so he closed his eyes. Then, he felt an emptiness in his arms. His fingers unconsciously bent, as if he wasn't used to it. "All right, Yuan Xiu, open your eyes." He opened his eyes. In front of him was still the same dark pavilion. Where was the little fox? "I'm over here." A soft voice came from behind him. Yuan Xiu's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was wrong. He turned around, and his eyes suddenly widened. In the night wind, under the reflection of the lotus flowers in the pond, there was a slim and elegant beauty, holding a lantern and smiling. The night wind blew her thin skirt, as if it would be blown away by the wind in the next moment. At this moment, the beauty was looking at him with a smile. "This handsome young master, I have a lantern in my hand. Would you be willing to give it to me?" In her hand, there was a lantern that had appeared in her hand at some unknown time. Yuan Xiu looked at the woman in front of him, who was so beautiful that she didn't seem like an ordinary person. He only felt that a certain emptiness in his heart had quietly been filled. He slowly revealed a smile. This young monk is honored to have the benefactress's favor. He slowly walked forward and reached out to take the lantern that swayed unsteadily in the night wind. Gu Xingyin looked up and rolled her eyes at him. "Young monk. Are you really planning to become a monk?" Yuan Xiu shook his head and smiled. "It's a habit that has been cultivated for many years. It's hard to change it in a short period of time." He looked at Gu Xingyin beside him with joy and curiosity. Master was talking about the root of love that he had planted for many generations, the person he loved wholeheartedly. Was that benefactress Qingbo? It was no wonder that as soon as he saw her, he felt incomparably close to her. Suddenly, a fragrant wind blew in front of him. Yuan Shou only felt a burst of soft and fragrant jade suddenly close to his arms. The peerless beauty was very close to him. She whispered in his ear, "Yuan Shou, did you accept my lantern because of my face?" No matter how calm Yuan Shou's heart was, when had he ever experienced such a situation? Naturally, his ears were a little red from the heat. He said in a low voice, "Benefactor Qing Bo, please do not speak. You must know that beauty is emptiness." Gu Xingyin snickered in her heart. She moved closer to him until their bodies were almost touching. She sensed that his body had stiffened. She wanted to tease him even more. She said with some dissatisfaction, "There are so many girls on the street who want to give you lanterns, but you don't accept them. I'm more beautiful than them, so when I give it to you, you take it. If this isn't because you like my beauty, then what is the reason?" Yuan Shou still shook her head. "Benefactor Qingba, you are different from them." Gu Xingyin pressed on, "What's the difference?" Yuan Shou stared blankly for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. She looked down carefully. Sure enough, he saw a trace of seriousness in the woman's seemingly careless movements. He seemed to have understood something, and his restless heart suddenly calmed down. In this little monk's heart, they are just withered bones and beautiful women. Benefactor Qingba, on the other hand, is the only color in this little monk's spiritual altar. A faint blush appeared on Gu Xingyin's white jade-like face. This monk was so serious even when he was whispering sweet nothings. However, Yuan Shou suddenly smiled. He gently reached out his free hand and held Gu Xingyin's hand. "Master once said that I have the roots of love planted over many generations. I have a lover who loves me wholeheartedly. Yuan Shou is lucky. It seems that I have already found this person." Chapter 838. Gu Xingyin and Yuan Shou walked around the Moon Lantern Festival together. The only thing that was not harmonious was that during the latter half of the festival, Gu Xingyin appeared in her human form and caused quite a stir in Lotus City. Cultivators were usually more beautiful than mortals. Even if their appearance was not astonishing, after cultivation, they would remove the impurities in their body and reconstruct their foundation. No matter what, there would not be a person with an unsightly appearance. However, even in the cultivation world where beauties were everywhere, Gu Xingyin's appearance was enough to be called the number one beauty. Although Yuan Shou's mind was calm, he still felt somewhat helpless when he saw countless people coveting his lover who had just interacted with his mind. He pulled Gu Xingyin to the side and said, "Qingba, why don't you change back to your original form?" Under Gu Xingyin's insistence, he finally omitted the word benefactor. Gu Xingyin deliberately asked, "Why?" How could Yuan Shou not know what she was thinking? He followed her heart and admitted, "There are too many people coveting Qingba. This little monk is afraid that the meditation dharma that I have been cultivating for so many years will lose its effect." Gu Xingyin burst out laughing. No matter what a beauty did, it was beautiful, let alone when she laughed so happily. Yuan Shou looked at her quietly and thought to himself that he would have to cultivate even more diligently in the future. With such a beauty by his side, it could be imagined that there would be many wild bees and butterflies in the future. Without enough strength, he would not be able to protect her. In the end, Gu Xingyin still changed into her white fox form and was sent back to the small courtyard by Yuan Shou. "Qingba lives together with Bodhi Mami?" Yuan Shou asked in surprise. Gu Xingyin was not surprised that he knew about Bodhi Mami and nodded. Since it was Bodhi Mami, Yuan Shou decided to pay her a visit. He grew up in the Lotus Pedestal sect and was quite familiar with Bodhi Mami. Yuan Shou. As expected, Bodhi Mami was very surprised when she saw Yuan Shou. Gu Xingyin returned to her human form when she returned to the courtyard. She saw that Yuan Shou and Bodhi Mami were obviously old acquaintances. She pulled Yuan Shou into the room and gave them some space to talk. Bodhi Mami was very experienced and knowledgeable. How could she not understand when she saw the two of them like this? It turned out that the root of Yuan Xiu's love was actually Qingbao's. Bodhi Mami had known about this matter all along. Now that it was confirmed, her heart felt at ease. But she still felt a trace of regret when she looked at Yuan Xiu. She was from the Lotus Pedestal sect. Although she had established her own sect, she could still be considered half a guardian of the Lotus Pedestal sect. Naturally, she hoped that the Lotus Pedestal sect would become better and better. Yuan Xiu's aptitude was the best among all the Buddhist disciples she had seen in so many years. She had no doubt that if Yuan Xiu were to devote herself to studying Buddhist doctrine, her achievements would far surpass those of the Lotus Pedestal sect. Couldn't, she could not force S's Mammy S. However, Bodhi Mami had thought it through. This was the Lotus Pedestal sect. If it was like other Buddhist sects, fighting for resources for benefits, it would be no different from other sections. How could it be called the Lotus Pedestal sect? She looked at Yuan Xiu lovingly. I know what happened to you and I won't say anything about it. I only hope that you can find the right person and live happily for the rest of your life. Yuan Xiu put his palms together and bowed to Bodhi Mami. Yuan Xiu knows that she is the one destined for me. Thank you for your blessings. When Gu Xingyin came out, Yuan Xiu had already left the courtyard. Chapter 839. The next day, Yuan Xiu went to find his teacher, Venerable Jing Ming, and explained the matter between him and Qing Bo. Since you've moved your heart, my Lotus Pedestal sect can't keep you. Venerable Jing Ming sighed. Yuan Xiu bowed and solemnly kowtowed 9 times to Venerable Jing Ming. That afternoon, he packed his things and left the Lotus Pedestal sect. In Bodhi Nanny's small courtyard, there was one more person who often swept the courtyard. Gu Xingyin felt that this kind of life was actually quite good. The years were peaceful. If Nun Wuxin didn't exist, it would be good for her and Yuan Xiu to find a similar place to live a peaceful life. Unfortunately, with her identity in this life, there was no way she could live a peaceful life. There was a rumor that a new king of the demon clan had been born. It was in Lotus City. One word shocked the world. The king of the demon clan wasn't some powerful person, but a unique king. Only a few extremely noble bloodlines could receive this title. No matter which bloodline it was, if she was allowed to grow up, she would be a great threat to everyone. The human cultivators didn't want such a king to appear in the demon clan, and the powerful people of the demon clan also didn't want a king who could unify the demon clan. The thing that Gu Xingyin was worried about still happened. According to the rumor, the future king of the demon clan was in Lotus City. Although there was no way to know whether this news was true or false, Gu Xingyin already knew that many people were secretly rushing to Lotus City. After living here for a period of time, Gu Xingyin already had a good impression of this city. Although the Lotus Pedestal sect was powerful, it was still alone. If someone really came to find trouble, the peaceful days in Lotus City would come to an end. She went to find Bodhi Nanny. Bodhi Nanny seemed to have expected this. She sighed and said, I guessed that you would come to find me soon. Miss Qing Bo, it's good for you to leave this place and avoid the limelight. Whether it's for your own sake or for Lotus City's sake. Of course, Gu Xingyin understood this. She was just here to say goodbye to the person who had taken care of her for so long. Walking out of Bodhi Nanny's courtyard, she saw Yuan Xiu standing at the side with a smile on his face. He was carrying a small package in his hand. Gu Xingyin stared at him with wide eyes. She hadn't had the time to tell Yuan Xiu about this, but from Yuan Xiu's reaction, it was obvious that she knew. Yuan Xiu smiled and said, I was just guessing. I didn't expect it to be true. Yuan Xiu is blessed with the supreme bloodline of the demon race. Gu Xingyin's heart warmed. She whispered, you don't mind? Being with her meant that in the future, he might have to bear great dangers and could no longer live a peaceful life like now. Yuan Shou didn't answer her question. Instead, he sighed and took 2 steps forward, pulling her into his embrace. I only care if I will be too far away from you in the future and not be worthy of you. Aya. A cry of surprise came from the door. Gu Xingyin raised her head from Yuan Shou's embrace and saw Yun Shu standing at the door of the courtyard, covering her eyes with her white and tender hands. The growth of the demon race was slow. She still looked like a teenager and would look like this for many years to come. Gu Xingyin noticed that she was also carrying a small package on her shoulder. Chapter 840. Gu Xingyin was surprised. Yun Shu, what are you doing? In her opinion, staying in Lotus City and cultivating with Bodhi Nanny was the most suitable path for Yun Shu. Yun Shu giggled and said, I grew up with Qing Bo. Of course, wherever Qing Bo goes, I'll follow. Her world had always been simple. The first creature she saw when she gained sentience was Qing Bo. In Yun Shu's heart, Qing Bo was the closest person to her. Of course, she wanted to be with Qing Bo and never be separated. Gu Xingyin felt her eyes heat up. She looked at Yuan Shou beside her and then looked at Yun Shu who was not far away. Suddenly, she revealed a smile. Yes. We'll always be together. No one and nothing could separate them. Before the people sent by various forces to gather information arrived, 3 people dressed in low-key clothes had already quietly left Lotus City. Gu Xingyin had taken the appearance-changing pill. Her face was too conspicuous and could easily cause unnecessary trouble. The 3 of them cultivated while changing their residence from time to time. Unexpectedly, more than 10 years passed just like that. Those cultivators and demons went to Lotus City. Most of them were blocked outside by the Lotus Platform sect's array. After the rest went in, they confirmed that there were no demons with the bloodline of the sovereign stage inside. The crowd did not give up and searched everywhere. After many years of fruitless searching, they slowly put this matter to the back of their minds. Perhaps it was really just a rumor. Otherwise, why was there no additional news after so many years? Nowadays, not many people still cared about this rumor. However, Gu Xingyin and the others were still very careful and did not give themselves away. They had already lived in this town for a year. This place was not big. The cultivators in the entire city were at most in the Golden Core stage. They were not much of a threat to them. During this period of time, they lived quite leisurely. Gu Xingyin was notified by the system that Nun Wuxin had arrived. She frowned. Wasn't she confined? She still remembered that Nun Wuxin had angered the Lotus Pedestal sect and had been grounded by the sect master of the Water Moon sect. The system replied, she has also been locked up for more than 10 years. Her master loves her disciple dearly, and the Water Moon sect master also felt that after all these years, her temperament should have been smoothed out a bit, so she was released. Temper his temper. Nun Wuxin's hatred for the demon clan had become a kind of morbid obsession. In the cultivation world, it was called a heart demon. In the modern society of the technological era, it was a typical mental illness. Gu Xingyin did not believe that a mere 10 years could change her personality. Sure enough, in less than 10 days, she heard the rumor that the heartless nun had tortured and killed a black bear spirit. Gu Xingyin, Yuan Shou, and Yun Shu discussed for a while before they decided to leave. With their current strength, although they were not completely powerless against Master Wuxin, they would not be able to gain the upper hand. Needless to say, Gu Xingyin's identity was not suitable to be exposed. However, some people could not be avoided just because you wanted to. Gu Xingyin had clearly followed the route provided by the system and walked in the opposite direction of Master Wuxin's goal, but they still met her. Looking at the black-robed Taoist nun with sharp eyes at the city gate, Gu Xingyin hurriedly pulled Yun Shu into a nearby restaurant. System. She was silent for a moment. What happened to going in the other direction? Chapter 841. The system was also somewhat helpless. Host, I've analyzed Nun Wuxin's original route. She was clearly going in the opposite direction, but I don't know why she changed her mind. The woman and the system fell into a mysterious silence. Gu Xingyin secretly cursed the so-called plot. Needless to say, it was definitely the power of the plot. Gu Xingyin grabbed Yun Shu's somewhat cold fingers and motioned for her not to be nervous. In her bloodline memory, there was a secret inherited technique that could conceal her demonic aura. As long as the person's cultivation level was not too much higher than hers, and they were wholeheartedly investigating, they would not be able to detect anything wrong. It was the same for Yun Shu. She was a spirit of vegetation, and there was no trace of hostility in her. She also cultivated under Bodhi Mami, and the cultivation methods she learned came from Buddhism. It was also a cultivation method that could conceal her identity as a demon. As long as Nun Wuxin was not perverted enough to stare at every pedestrian on the road to see if they were demonic, the possibility of them being discovered was not high. However, Gu Xingyin felt that things were not that simple. The so-called plot would always inadvertently trap her in various ways. Good things did not come true, but bad things did. A beam of sword light slashed up from downstairs, cutting a table beside Gu Xingyin and the others in half. The waiter, who was about to clean up the table, was so frightened that his face turned pale and he took 2 steps back. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. The waiter looked no more than 16 or 17 years old. His clean and delicate face was now so pale that there was no trace of blood. A terrifying pressure descended, and the figure in the black Taoist robe walked up the wooden stairs step by step. Gu Xingyin held Yun Shu's hand and felt that the little girl's palm was sweating nervously. She sized up Nun Wuxin. A cultivator's age could not be determined from their appearance. Based on appearance alone, Nun Wuxin could actually be called a beauty. However, the murderous aura on her face was too strong. Ordinary people who looked at her would only be intimidated by her aura, and would not really notice her appearance. At this moment, the owner of the restaurant walked out. He felt his heart ache when he saw the windows and floor that had been destroyed by one person and one sword. When he saw the culprit, he scolded, "Where did this monk come from? How dare he come to someone else's restaurant and cause trouble?" He couldn't finish his sentence because Nun Wuxin glanced at him. The shopkeeper felt as if his throat was being squeezed by something invisible. He had a feeling that if he continued to speak, this terrifying Taoist nun would strike his body with her saber. She would really kill him. Nun Wuxin flicked her finger and a spiritual bead fell into the shopkeeper's palm. She said coldly, "Take it as compensation." The boss didn't dare to say anything more. He just stood aside with the spirit bead in his hand. He actually wanted to leave, but there were still customers in the shop. There were many people eating on the second floor. Heartless Nun's sword had scared away many timid guests, but there were still people who were ready to watch the fun. Gu Xingyin and the others did not leave. Nun Wuxin raised the sword in her hand and pointed it at the waiter who was trembling with fear. "How dare you, evil creature, to mingle among humans? Today, I will get rid of evil for the people." The waiter's body trembled even more violently when he heard that. Gu Xingyin could see that there was no trace of blood on his face. He was even breaking out in a cold sweat. The shopkeeper, who was standing aside, looked at the waiter worriedly. "You. Nun, are you misunderstanding something? Ah Bai is our waiter. He has been here for a year. He is very good, well-behaved and diligent. He often uses his salary to buy food for the homeless children on the street." He didn't finish his words because Nun Wuxin's sword had cut at his feet. Recommended the super good gay friend Huan Chu's book, Transmigration System, A Guide to Prince Charming. It specializes in conquering all kinds of Prince Charming. There is always one that suits you. Chapter 842. The heartless nun said coldly, "If you say one more word, I'll treat you as an accomplice of this evil creature." The boss tactfully shut his mouth and only looked at the waiter named Bai with a worried gaze. The heartless nun looked at Bai as if she was looking at an inanimate object. Her eyes were filled with hatred and cruelty. She slowly raised the sword in her hand. Her movements were slow, as if she enjoyed watching her prey tremble before death. As if his desire to live was too strong, the young man called Bai finally spoke in a trembling voice, "I've never done anything bad." Why do you want to kill me?" A bloodthirsty look flashed across the heartless nun's eyes. She looked at Bai expressionlessly. "Your mistake is that you're a demon." As soon as she said this, the remaining customers in the restaurant were in an uproar. In this world, cultivation was prevalent. Ordinary people were not very repulsed or afraid of demons. Someone immediately said, "Nun, you're also a cultivator. Why don't you accumulate some merit for yourself? I've lived here for many years. Bai is really a good child. Once, my son was almost kidnapped by a bad person. He was the one who helped me find him." The heartless nun laughed coldly. "A demon is a demon. I don't care what he's done. I only know that I, the heartless nun, have never left a single demon alive." The sword in her hand suddenly shook. A bright sword light slashed toward Bai's head. Bai was already scared out of his wits. He could only watch in despair as the sword light reached his head. There seemed to be a soft sigh in his ears. Several exquisite shadows of golden lotuses appeared in his dazed eyes, blocking the sword light above his head. The heartless nun put away her sword and looked sharply at Yuan Xiu. A Buddhist disciple. Apart from the demon clan, the people she hated the most were undoubtedly the Buddhist sect disciples. That was because those people were always full of benevolence. Their hypocrisy disgusted her. Especially that lotus pedestal sect. They even created a lotus city and protected the demons. Once her strength was strong enough, she would definitely destroy the so-called one Shan array with a single slash. Yuan Xiu put his palms together. "I'm just a Buddhist disciple." Nun Wuxin's gaze darted around him and suddenly stopped on Yun Shu, who looked a little uneasy. She suddenly laughed out loud. "What an unexpected harvest today. I originally thought that I had only found a little rabbit spirit. Who would have thought that there was actually a tree spirit hiding here?" She looked at Yuan Xiu coldly. "You actually allowed yourself to fall and mix around with a demon. If you know what's good for you, get out of the way and I can spare your life. Otherwise, I'll kill you as well." She seemed to have recognized Yun Shu's identity and did not intend to let her go. Yuan Shui's expression turned cold, but she still said in a gentle voice, "This benefactor Bai has no sin of killing. Yun Shu, who is beside me, has been taught by Buddhism since she was young. Abbess is also a cultivator. Evil can be punished, but I'm afraid it's not good to kill the innocent." Killing the innocent. Once again, Nun Wuxin raised the sword in her hand. "They're demons. Based on this alone, they can't be considered innocent. All the demons must die." Gu Xingyin looked coldly at the woman with a deranged gaze. Nun Wuxin's appearance clearly showed that she had a very deep inner demon. Even if she did not have the sin of killing the nine-tailed white fox, she would not be able to pass the inner demon tribulation during the advancement. Chapter 843. Even though Yuan Xiu had recuperated well, he was still displeased to meet such an unreasonable person. He could only say, "If you insist, I won't hold back." The heartless nun seemed to have heard a joke. Hold back? Just you? She could see the realm of this Buddhist cultivator at a glance. Although it was extremely shocking that he had reached such a realm at his age, there was still a gap of a few hundred years between him and her. "In another 100 years, you might be my opponent. I'll say it again, get out of the way." Yuan Shou shook his head and formed a seal with both hands, making a gesture to attack. Take this opportunity to leave. Gu Xingyin heard this voice in her mind and understood Yuan Shou's meaning in an instant. She pulled the dazed Bai to the side. A green light flashed from Yuan Shu's body and the three of them disappeared without a trace. The heartless nun, who had been paying attention to them, was furious. She forced Yuan Shou back with a sword and disappeared in a flash. Then, Yuan Shou's figure moved and disappeared from the restaurant. The people in the restaurant only heaved a sigh of relief when these people left. I wonder if that young master can win against that evil nun. Someone muttered. The owner looked out of the window worriedly, hoping that Bai could escape. However, he also knew that regardless of whether Bai could escape this disaster, he would never return to this place. Gu Xingyin and the other two were stopped by the heartless nun on a grassland outside the city. The heartless nun slashed her sword at Yuan Shu. Among the three of them, Gu Xingyin's cultivation was the strongest. Only Gu Xingyin had the ability to block this attack. She gritted her teeth and a green light flashed in her ink-black eyes. Her originally ordinary face seemed to have a different charm at this moment. She quickly formed a seal with both hands. A white light formed in her hands and met the sword light. Gu Xingyin groaned and took 2 steps back. Yuan Shu hurriedly supported her. Qingba, are you all right? At the same time, she hated herself for being useless. At this time, she couldn't help at all. Gu Xingyin calmed down the churning qi and blood in her body. Sure enough, with her current strength, it was still very difficult for her to take Master Wuxin's sword head-on. Nun Wuxin exclaimed in surprise and took a closer look at the woman whom she had ignored from the beginning to the end. After taking a look, she smiled. There's actually a fish that slipped through the net. Your concealment technique is not bad. Even I was almost fooled. After she finished speaking, her expression turned cold. But now is just the right time. Let me send you 3 evildoers to hell. A golden light flashed beside Gu Xingyin, and Yuan Shou appeared beside her. Nun Wuxin looked at him, her eyes full of murderous intent. A Buddhist cultivator who mingles with 2 evildoers is not a good person either. Today, I'll clean up the Buddhist sect for you. Before Yuan Shou could say anything, Gu Xingyin had already lost her patience. She coldly said to Nun Wuxin, "Bah, shameless old thing. Do you think you're so shameless? Cleaning up the Buddhist sect for you? Why don't you help your master kill this unfilial disciple of yours with a sword?" She knew what kind of words were the most irritating to this kind of rude and unreasonable person who did things her own way. It was useless to reason with this kind of person. Only by being more rude and unreasonable than her could one control her. Sure enough, Nun Wuxin's face turned livid with anger after hearing Gu Xingyin's words. Chapter 844. She raised her hand and swung her sword. There was no pattern to this attack. It was obvious that she had been angered by Gu Xingyin. Yuan Shou was already prepared. He put his palms together and a huge illusory Buddha statue appeared behind him. It reached out and caught Nun Wuxin's sword. Good boy. I'll take care of you first, then I'll get rid of those little demons. She laughed coldly and focused on dealing with Yuan Shou. Gu Xingyin watched for a while and knew that it was only a matter of time before Yuan Shou was defeated. She pulled Yuan Shu over. Yuan Shu, I remember you have an escape technique. Later, I'll. She told Yuan Shu everything in detail, and Yuan Shu nodded repeatedly. As for the little boy, Bai, he followed Yuan Shu closely. He looked a little older than Yuan Shu, but Yuan Shu held his hand as if she was holding a little brother. Gu Xingyin walked to the other side and slowly chanted something in her heart. Her eyes slowly turned emerald green. A breeze blew around them. It was so light that Nun Wuxin, who was fighting with Yuan Shou, did not notice it. While the two of them were in the midst of their battle, a huge demonic beast phantom suddenly appeared behind Gu Xingyin. The demon beast seemed to be living in the clouds. Its entire body was shrouded in white mist, and only a few strands of white fur could be seen. Nun Wuxin was shocked and the illusory demon beast appeared. She looked straight at Gu Xingyin with a trace of vigilance in her eyes. She could clearly see this demon's realm. How could she summon such a powerful Dharma idol with her strength? Unless, this little demon's bloodline was very strong. Nun Wuxin's eyes lit up when she thought of this. She hated demons all her life. What she wanted to do most was to kill all the demons in the world. Everyone knew that the stronger a demon's bloodline was, the more powerful it would be in the future. Nun Wuxin felt happy just thinking about killing a powerful demon in the future while it was still a child. However, very quickly, she saw that the demonic beast's shadow, whose true form could not be seen, seemed to have opened its mouth. A burst of white mist that covered the sky and covered the earth sprayed towards her. She subconsciously slashed out with her sword, only to find that it was not an attack at all. The entire grassland was shrouded in whiteness. Master Wuxin was surprised to find that her divine sense and 5 senses could only perceive things within 1 meter of her. What kind of method was this? She slashed out again and again, but to no avail. As for Yuan Xiu, the moment the white mist appeared, she felt her arm being grabbed by a hand. Gu Xingyin's voice sounded in his ear, "Come with me." The two of them came to the place where Yun Shu and Bai were. Yun Shu, who was already prepared, moved and instantly turned into a small tree the size of an adult. 3 branches stretched out and wrapped around the 3 of them. With a flash of green light, it burrowed into the ground and disappeared. When the 3 of them reappeared, they were already in a mountain range thousands of li away. When they appeared, Gu Xingyin almost lost her balance and was supported by Yuan Xiu. She did not look well. It was obvious that the move that trapped Nun Wuxin had consumed a lot of her demon power. My maze can trap her for a while. After she comes out, she won't be able to find out which direction we left in. I guess she won't be able to catch up with us, Gu Xingyin said. Yuan Xiu silently handed her a small bottle. Gu Xingyin took it and looked at it. It was a bottle of vitality replenishing pills. She smiled and swallowed 2 of them. Yuan Xiu looked at her silently. His free hand clenched into a fist so tightly that blue veins popped out. Chapter 845. It was because he wasn't strong enough that she had to pay such a huge price to protect him and the others. He secretly swore in his heart that next time, he would definitely not let her do this again. And that Wu Xian. He lowered his eyes, concealing a trace of fierceness that flashed through them. Gu Xingyin meditated for a while and recovered a lot of strength. She then looked up at Bai, who was sitting on the side and looking at them. This little white rabbit demon had clearly just taken human form and was very pure and naive. Gu Xingyin thought for a while and felt that it was inconvenient to bring him along. Moreover, the 3 of them did not have a fixed place to stay, which was not a good thing for him. Bai, you're called Bai, right? It's not convenient for us to bring you along. What do you plan to do? Gu Xingyin asked. Bai looked up when he heard that. He thought for a while and shook his head. He looked at Gu Xingyin pitifully and whispered, Can I follow you? I'm very diligent and can do all kinds of work. That little look made Gu Xingyin's heart soften, but she still rejected him. No, our journey will not be peaceful. If you follow us, it will be unsafe. I'll tell you a place to go. There's a place called Lotus City in the north. It's very friendly to the demon race. You can live a peaceful life there, she said to him. Bai's eyes lit up. Really? Won't someone find out my identity and chase me away or kill me? Gu Xingyin nodded. She told Bai the detailed route. Bai could stay in the restaurant for more than a year without being discovered, which meant that he was quite good at disguising himself. As long as he did not meet a paranoid demon like Master Wuxia along the way, there should not be any big problems. The few of them parted ways here. Bai went to Lotus City. Gu Xingyin and the other two continued to walk and stop as they pleased. More than 10 years passed like that. Yuan Xiu's strength had improved by leaps and bounds in these 10 years. Gu Xingyin had the bloodline of the nine-tailed Arctic fox. She had the bloodline of the inherited bloodline. Her cultivation speed was extremely fast and she had no bottlenecks. Even so, she was only at the same level as him. Poor Yunshu. She had to spend every day with these two cultivation freaks. Fortunately, she was just a tree without much ambition. She was happy with the sun and the soil. Otherwise, she would have been tortured to death by these two people. On this day, in a small courtyard, Yuan Xiu and Yun Shu sat at the stone table in the courtyard. Yuan Xiu's expression was indifferent, but Yun Shu was clearly worried. Yuan Xiu had already set up an isolation array in the courtyard. In the room, Gu Xingyin was breaking through. She was about to grow the fourth tail of her Dharma form. The tail of the nine-tailed white fox Dharma idol grew according to the cultivation speed and realm. Originally, according to the normal speed, the second tail would grow in about 10 years, the third in about 20 years, and the fourth in about 50 years. However, Gu Xingyin's talent could not be measured by common sense. Moreover, she was blessed by the heavenly Tao. She was accompanied by Yuan Xiu, the winner of every life. In the past few decades, the two of them had encountered countless treasures in secret realms. Their strength was also growing at an extremely terrifying speed. Gu Xingyin had already decided that if she could successfully grow the fourth tail this time, the first thing she would do was to find that old Taoist nun, Wuxia, to settle accounts. In these years, she had become more and more rampant. Yuan Xiu, who had been waiting outside the courtyard, suddenly had a change in expression. He told Yun Shu, who was unaware of the situation, to stay there and not move. After that, he quickly flashed into Gu Xingyin's room. Chapter 846. Gu Xingyin's current situation was not good. Actually, it was not bad. After all, her fourth Dharma idol tail had successfully grown out. However, her situation wasn't exactly good. When Yuan Xiu entered, he saw Gu Xingyin sitting upright on the ground with her eyes tightly shut. There did not seem to be anything wrong with her, but that was just how it looked. Yuan Xiu frowned. He had come over because he sensed that something was wrong with Qing Bo. But at this moment, he could not tell what was wrong with her. Until Gu Xingyin opened her eyes. Her eyes were as beautiful as usual, but there was something else in those serene and deep green eyes. Gu Xingyin secretly cursed herself for being careless. Her advancement had been very smooth, but she did not expect that when she successfully grew out her fourth tail, her mind would be distracted. It was this moment that caused her to fall into her own trap. The world's impression of a fox's charm was not groundless. Foxes were good at bewitching people, bewildering formations, and seducing people. Not to mention the nine-tailed white fox with the purest and noblest bloodline of the fox clan. Gu Xingyin felt the waves of passion in her body grow stronger and stronger. She secretly gritted her teeth. She glanced at Yuan Xiu, who was walking in, and gritted her teeth to maintain her calm. She said, "Yuan Xiu, I'm fine. You can go out first." Yuan Xiu did not move. If he really believed it, he would not be Yuan Xiu. Gu Xingyin watched as this handsome man approached her and squatted down. His unique scent of lotus hit her in the face, causing Gu Xingyin's face to turn slightly red. Yuan Xiu was still frowning. He said, "What happened to you?" Gu Xingyin could not help but reach out and grab his arm. Her whole body slid into his embrace. Feeling the coolness of his embrace, she could not help but sigh comfortably. When Yuan Xiu touched the hot body in his arms, he finally realized what had happened to Gu Xingyin. His expression became slightly uncomfortable. The two of them had been together for dozens of years. Although they had long understood each other's feelings, they had never done anything out of line. It was not that their feelings were not deep enough, but because of Gu Xing's special physique, before his cultivation reached a certain level, it was very easy for him to hurt his foundation. After all, the nine-tailed Arctic fox had a special physique. When she could not control herself, the normal love between a man and a woman would very likely turn into a one-sided plundering. Gu Xingyin raised her head slightly and looked at her lover's flawless handsome face at a close distance. She chuckled and exhaled, "I told you that I was fine, but you still came closer." Her tone was 2 parts complaining, 5 parts acting coquettishly, and 3 parts, subconsciously sweet and seductive. Yuan Xiu's eyes darkened as she calmly said, "I'm worried about you." Gu Xingyin only felt her body heat up a little. She had never known how to be reserved in front of Yuan Xiu. Hearing this, she leaned her body even closer. Her whole body softly leaned into Yuan Xiu's arms, leaning close to him. "I didn't want you to see me. You came in yourself," she said, slowly reaching out her hand to touch Yuan Xiu's face. "Tell me, do you want to leave now?" she asked with a chuckle. Her green eyes were charming and teasing. Yuan Xiu's eyes became deeper. He looked at the world's most seductive woman in his arms and resisted the urge to turn his head away. "Your body," Gu Xingyin had already found his lips and tongue, "I know my body best." "I only know that your body," she did not speak. She only moved slightly. Sensing the man's body stiffen, Gu Xingyin laughed with satisfaction. Chapter 847. Gu Xingyin was originally fine, but now something was wrong. She looked at the man beside her who seemed to be unsatisfied and quickly pressed down on the hand that was creeping up her body. "I was wrong, really." She tried to widen her eyes and make herself look more pitiful. However, she didn't know that her face was flushed at this moment. Her exposed skin was full of red marks, and the corners of her eyes and brows were intoxicated with lust. The effect of such a stare was completely different from what she wanted. Yuan Xiu's eyes darkened. When Gu Xingyin saw him like this, she remembered how she had cried after being bullied. She wanted to cry but had no tears. "I was really wrong. You're amazing. Really, I can't take it anymore." Yuan Xiu smiled and stopped teasing her. He said softly, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Have a good rest." Although this man was sometimes bad, he was a man of his words. Gu Xingyin was relieved. The fatigue from her body rushed up in an instant. With her lover beside her, she quickly fell asleep. Yuan Xiu was in good spirits. He lowered his head and looked at Gu Xingyin's beautiful sleeping face for a while. He finally remembered that Yun Shu was in the courtyard. He got up quietly, put on his clothes, and carefully covered her with the quilt. After gently kissing her forehead, he quietly closed the door. As soon as Yuan Xiu came out, Yun Shu, who had been waiting in the courtyard, anxiously greeted him. "Why were you gone for so long? Is Qingbo okay? I'll go see her." Yuan Xiu grabbed the anxious Yun Shu. How could he let anyone see Qingbo in this state? Not even Yun Shu. "Qingbo is very tired now. She just fell asleep. Don't disturb her now." Yun Shu had a sudden realization and quickly nodded. "Okay, I'll go see her when she wakes up." Why didn't she think of it? Qingbo's condition must be very serious if Yuan Xiu came out after such a long time. She must be very tired now. Yuan Xiu looked at the dazed Yun Shu and suddenly felt a little apologetic. He asked, "You have been here all this time?" Yun Shu did not know what he wanted to ask and could only nod. Yuan Shou said apologetically, I didn't know I would be in there for so long. You can go and rest by yourself. Yun Shu shook his head. You and Qingbo are both inside, so of course I have to keep watch. What if someone comes to disturb us? Yuan Shou felt even more embarrassed. He hurriedly said, It's fine now. I'll keep watch. You should go and rest. Even if he was a demon, his body wouldn't be able to take it if he didn't sleep for several days and nights. Yun Shu also felt a little tired, so she reminded Yuan Shou and Qingbo to remember to wake her up when they woke up before going to bed. This silly child. Yuan Shou looked at her small back and shook her head. In terms of age, Yun Shu was older than Yuan Shou, but she always looked like a little girl. Compared to Gu Xingyin and Yuan Shou, she was much more naive. The two of them almost treated her like a child. Gu Xingyin slept soundly. Thanks to the special physique of this body, after she woke up, she didn't feel anything other than a little sore all over her body. Her previous clothes had already been torn to pieces. She got up and found a new set of clothes to wear before leaving the room. You're awake. Yuan Shou looked at her with a normal expression and asked with concern, Do you feel uncomfortable? Gu Xingyin shook her head. It's okay. Hearing this, Yuan Shou laughed and said in a low voice, Then I can rest assured. Gu Xingyin did not hear clearly and asked subconsciously, What? Yuan Shou smiled. My wife is gifted. Chapter 848. Gu Xingyin was suddenly teased and coughed calmly. She thought for a moment and decided to change the topic. Yuan Shou frowned. You want to deal with Nun Wuxin? In his opinion, the safest way was to wait until the two of them were stronger and had full confidence before dealing with her. Gu Xingyin also knew that this was the safest way, but, every day, the system would tell her where Nun Wuxin had gone and how many Yao she had killed. Some things, you probably know, are not the same as someone revealing the bloody truth in front of her. Also, Nun Wuxin deserved to die. Even in modern society, a person who tortured and killed so many animals would be sentenced, not to mention that the animals she killed were all demons with spiritual intelligence. Gu Xingyin only said to Yuan Shou, in the past 10 years, Nun Wuxin has killed a total of 1370 Yao. This number was truly terrifying to the extreme. Before the statistics were out, ordinary people would think that Nun Wuxin often killed Yao, but when Gu Xingyin revealed the number, Yuan Shou fell silent. On average, she killed 1 Yao every 3 days. There were not many Yao to begin with. No powerful Yao could bear the loss of more than 1,000 Yao. Yuan Shou thought that she had the royal blood of the Yao and felt a trace of this. He could not help but feel sorry for her. Every day, she felt so many of her own kind being killed. She must have been in great pain, right? He said softly, Okay, let's go kill her and avenge those Yao who died unjustly. Gu Xingyi knew that he might have misunderstood something, but she did not explain. She could not explain the existence of the system. A year later, Nun Wuxin, who was hated by countless Yao, had her heart pierced by a claw. That person wrote down her sins on the mountain wall next to her corpse. The killing she had committed shocked all the cultivators in Yao. The person who left the message called herself the nine-tailed Arctic fox. She scolded the powerful Yao for being useless and allowing such a murderer to kill their own kind. While the demon race mighty figures were embarrassed, they were more concerned about the demon race's self-proclaimed nine-tailed white fox. Countless demons were looking for this demon who claimed to be the nine-tailed Arctic fox. The Water Moon sect was also furious and vowed to find the murderer who killed the heartless nun. Unfortunately, 200 years had passed, and no one had gotten any news about that person. 200 years ago, it was someone else who came looking for her. 200 years later, it was Gu Xingyin's turn to find someone else. Something big happened in the cultivation world. All the territories of the demon clan above the incarnation stage were all occupied. The people involved kept it a secret, and those who did not know delayed the best time to deal with it. By the time the human race reacted, the demon race had already changed their leader. They were no longer wary of each other. Gu Xingyin used her bloodline and strength to suppress all opposing voices and became the new queen of the demon race. She did not avoid talking about Nun Wuxin and said that she was the one who did it. Wuxin deserved to die. This was her reply to the Water Moon sect, and it was so domineering. The Grand Elder of the Water Moon sect was extremely angry. Unfortunately, the current Yao clan was not something that their Water Moon sect could afford to provoke. The sect master of the Water Moon sect was also unwilling to clean up the mess caused by the death of that troublesome junior sister, so this matter was left unsettled. As for the demon race, everyone knew that in addition to their queen's peerless appearance and strength, she also had a human lover who was very close to her. There was once an elder of the demon race who objected to this, but he was sent flying by Gu Xingyin. The queen was not arbitrary in other matters, but when it came to her lover, no one could touch her reverse scale. Give birth to a pure demon race bloodline with a demon race. Do you want this queen to die now to make room for you? Once this was said, no one dared to mention this matter again. Yuan Xiu turned her head and looked at her lover who was wholeheartedly protecting her, and the corners of her mouth curved slightly. Master, thank you for insisting on not shaving my head. Chapter 849. As a monster, Gu Xingyin had enough time to accompany her lover in this life. The two spent a long time together until they grew old together. When she opened her eyes again, she was in a stuffy place. It was very dark and there was no light, but it was very comfortable to lie down and she didn't feel stuffy. System. Gu Xingyin felt a little strange. Was she kidnapped in a small dark room? The system seemed to know her guess and replied, "Host, don't worry, please accept the memory transmission." Gu Xingyin let the system transmit the original memory and the plot of the world into her mind. Mermaid? From the past to the present? Gu Xingyin blinked in the dark, silently digesting the plot of this world. The original Lian Yang was a mermaid born in the South Sea. Her race had always been mysterious and had no interaction with human beings. Occasionally they were seen on the sea, but they only left a few beautiful legends. Lian Yang didn't have a clear understanding of human beings. She only heard a few stories from the human world when she was young, so she was a little curious and unfamiliar with them. However, she didn't know what she had done. Once, when she went out to sea to play, she encountered a huge storm. She was so scared that she quickly hid in a huge clam shell in the sea. However, she didn't expect that when she woke up, everything had changed and everything had changed. And she lost all her memories. When she woke up, she was in a very strange place. When the man saw her, he was shocked and excited, which scared her. She didn't understand the human language, so she didn't know that the man said, "I'm rich now." She saw that the man gave her delicious food and was very gentle to her. She thought that she met a good man. But she didn't know that 2 days later, an average-looking girl walked into the room. Average-looking was Lian Yang's own evaluation of her. After all, mermaids were all beautiful people. The girl's appearance was considered beautiful among human beings, but in Lian Yang's eyes, it was not attractive at all. Gu Xingyin, who read the plot, removed the clam shell. The man was called by Gang, a white-collar worker in a company. He brought the clam shell back when he was swimming at the beach. Because he couldn't open it, he kept it at home, waiting for an opportunity to see if he could sell it. That girl was his university classmate and also his girlfriend. Her name was Xiao Zi. Xiao Zixin was arrogant and had seen a lot in the entertainment industry. She had already looked down on her boyfriend, by Gang. Originally, she wanted to break up with him this time, but after seeing Lian Yang, she gave up the idea. She had a role that she really wanted to get, but with her looks and ability, it was not enough to move the director. She originally wanted to recommend herself, but when she saw Lien Yang, she knew that she had a better idea. After coaxing Bai Gang to let her take Lien Yang away, Xiaozi drove Lien Yang into the director's home. When they came out, Xiaozi got the role she wanted. But Lien Yang never came out of the director's house again. That director was a pervert. He liked to abuse people, and the more beautiful the person being abused, the more pleasure he would get. Lien Yang had been treated cruelly by him. Until one day, an idea flashed through her mind. The sharpness hidden under her round nails easily cut the director's throat. At this time, Xiaozi had become famous because of the role the director gave her. She took good care of Lien Yang, the lucky star, who brought her good luck. However, after coming in and seeing the scene, she was scared out of her wits. Chapter 850. It turned out that the seemingly harmless mermaid was not really harmless. Xiaozi didn't know about mermaids. She only read about them in Western fairy books. This kind of creature with a human body and a fish tail was called mermaid. She didn't dare to take a step closer. Looking at Lien Yang, who was still in the closed water tank, she dialed the police. She didn't dare to tell the truth. She only said that she came to visit the director to ask about the movie and saw this. The mermaid's strong body and recovery ability made it impossible to find any scars on Lien Yang's body. Xiaozi did not dare to say what the director had done in private. The police only thought that this strange creature had a strong aggressive nature. In order to protect herself, Xiaozi gritted her teeth and said that she didn't know anything. She also said that the mermaid didn't intend to let her go after seeing her. Lien Yang remembered this vicious woman who sent her to the director. Seeing that she was emotional and couldn't defend herself, the policeman even believed Xiaozi's words. Lien Yang was finally sent to the state's secret agency. The director also announced to the public that he died in an accident. Lien Yang was treated as a strange creature to be studied. After suffering so much, her forgotten strength broke out. She tried to escape from the laboratory, but was treated as a dangerous object by the secret force. After her death, even her body wasn't treated well. Instead, it was cruelly dissected for research. What about Xiaozi? She had nothing to do with any of this. Relying on her previous popularity, she took on a few big productions and shot to fame, becoming an A-list actress. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and almost couldn't help swearing. At this time, Lien Yang was still in the clam shell that couldn't be opened. Bai Gang was looking for a chance to sell her. Originally, Lien Yang woke up at this time. But this time, Gu Xingyin didn't plan to come out. Just sell her. No matter what, it couldn't be worse than the current situation. Gu Xingyin looked at the man outside through the dark clam shell. He tried to open the shell with a kitchen knife and pliers in vain. However, how could something that could withstand thousands of years without being destroyed be damaged by his puny strength? Gu Xingyin yawned impatiently and began to think about what to do. With her current appearance, it was impossible to escape alone. Not to mention, even if this body had changed its soul, it had never transformed into a pair of legs. This meant that she could not leave the water or walk on the ground. What's more, she didn't know how to speak human language. Any human who saw him in this state would probably call the police, right? Gu Xingyin was discouraged. She could only stay here and pretend to be a fossil for a while before thinking of other ways. In fact, there was still the best possibility, to meet him. Even if he did not have any memories of her, Gu Xingyin was confident that he would not be afraid of her, nor would he harbor any malicious thoughts towards her. The possibility of this happening wasn't small. The fate between the two of them and the luck of the main characters gave her a glimmer of hope. In the room, Bai Gang looked at the huge clamshell that didn't move at all and couldn't help but feel discouraged. When he saw it at the seaside, he was ecstatic, thinking that he had found a treasure. According to those legends, such a big clam shell might contain some kind of huge pearl. He wanted to find a professional to cut it, but he was afraid that there would be nothing inside after opening it. After thinking for a while, he decided to send this thing to an auction not long after. It would be best if someone could buy it. If no one wanted it, he would spend money to find someone to cut it open. Anyway, he just picked it up. He didn't feel distressed at all. Chapter 851. It was an accident that Fengqing came here. He had planned to go to another city to talk about a cooperation, but the boss of that company suddenly called to apologize and said that there was an accident at home. Fengqing asked around and found out that the boss's son was in a car accident and was now in the hospital. After knowing that it was not an excuse, he didn't care about what happened next. Then, his plan fell through for a day. At this time, his childhood friend Li Zi said that there was an auction today and he could come to see if there was anything good. Li Zi's real name was Li Zi. He was the third child in the family and had two older brothers. It was said that when his mother was pregnant with him, she found someone to check and said that it was a girl. Li Zi's mother, who wanted a daughter, was very happy and had already thought of a name. But she didn't expect that it would be a boy with a handle. Li Zi's mother was depressed and accepted the fact, but she didn't change her son's name. Every time Li Zi talked about it, he was depressed. His friends also gave him face and always called him Li Zi. In 2 months, it would be Fengqing's mother's birthday. He thought about it and agreed to come. In the end, he really saw something that he was interested in. At first glance, there was nothing magical about the huge clam shell that needed 2 staff members to carry. Fengqing listened with interest as the host on the stage promoted this big thing with great emotion. Unfortunately, no matter how many flowers he mentioned, not many people expressed their interest in buying them. Well, who would buy such a thing that didn't have any value other than its appearance? How old was it? It wasn't an antique. No one present was stupid. Bai Gang was so nervous that he kept drinking water. He prayed that someone would take a fancy to it. Otherwise, he would have come here for nothing. He even had to pay for an admission ticket. The threshold here was not low. A ticket cost almost 3 months of Bai Gang's salary. Under his prayer, someone really made a bid. 1 million, Fengqing said lightly. Many people looked in the direction of the voice, wanting to see who this idiot with a hole in his head was. Spending 1 million to buy such a thing and put it in the house to suppress evil. However, when they saw who this idiot was, they tactfully withdrew their gazes. So it was this person from the Feng family. Even if he burned 1 million yuan for fun, no one would dare to say anything about it. Who asked him to be rich? Origin City's Feng clan was not only wealthy, but their power in secret was something that no one dared to underestimate. Fengqing clasped his hands and said to Li Zi with a smile, "It looks pretty good. Take it home and put it in my newly built swimming pool." Li Zi, everyone who heard this, "Fine, you have money, you can do whatever you want." The happiest person was, of course, Bai Gang. This was 1 million yuan. He had picked up 1 million yuan out of thin air. Fengqing didn't have any intention of meeting the seller. He directly asked someone to send her back to his villa and followed behind her in his car. After those people placed the huge and heavy clam shell in the corner of the pool according to his instructions and left, he was the only one left in the villa. Fengqing stood at the edge of the pool and looked at the clamshell. He had always believed in his intuition, and he had invested in several successful businesses because of his intuition. This time, when he saw the item on the stage, his heart skipped a beat. An unprecedented possessiveness surged in his heart. He didn't understand where this feeling came from, but he followed his heart and bought it. Chapter 852. At this moment, he looked at the ordinary-looking clamshell and wondered what was so special about it that had attracted him. He looked at it for a while but could not figure out anything. Then, he remembered what the auctioneer said before. He said that the clamshell could not be opened no matter what. Could it be that there was something good inside? Feng Cheng was also wondering if he should find someone to open it. He felt a little thirsty and wanted to go back to the house to get himself a glass of water. But just as Feng Cheng turned around, he heard the sound of water. The sound of water? He was the only one at home and there was only a clamshell in the swimming pool. Where did the sound come from? Feng Cheng calmly turned his head and saw ripples forming around the clamshell. He was surprised. Could it be that this thing was alive? Wasn't it a fossil from thousands of years ago? Could it be that it had become a spirit? Feng Cheng shook his head at his unreliable thoughts. His eyes were fixed on the big clamshell, but his hand could not help but touch the back of his waist. The head of the Feng family was a proper businessman on the outside, but in private, he never left his gun. There were many people who wanted to kill him. However, Feng Cheng saw that there seemed to be a very small crack on the big clamshell. Was it really a living thing? Feng Cheng looked at the clamshell with interest. He wanted to see what was inside. The crack became bigger little by little, like a carefully wrapped gift being opened little by little, and then the most exquisite content was revealed. The thing was revealed little by little in front of Feng Cheng. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he forgot to breathe at this moment. Inside the big clamshell was not a big pearl, nor was it a white clam meat. Instead, it was a person lying inside and slowly opening her eyes. Feng Cheng's first reaction was that she was a mermaid. After all, everyone had heard of fairy tales about mermaids when they were young. However, he took another look at the clothes that the person was wearing. It was light green and looked like a misty veil. It fit her perfectly, and the style was clearly from ancient Hua nation. Mermaid? Feng Cheng took a long time to recall such a creature in myths and legends. There were mermaids in the southern sea. They had deep blue hair and jade-green eyes. They had the body of a human and the tail of a fish. Their appearances were exceptional, and their tears could form pearls. Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Feng Cheng's voice. Very good, her luck was not bad. Feng Cheng watched as the mermaid with delicate eyebrows slowly sat up. It seemed to be very happy to see the water. It cheered and jumped into the water. She was born to be in the water. Feng Cheng looked at her graceful figure in the water and suddenly chuckled. Was that the reason for his strong intuition and possessiveness? Since that's the case, you were born to be mine. He looked at Gu Xingyin, who was swimming freely, and his eyes were filled with determination. He didn't make a sound and just quietly watched the merman swim around in the water excitedly before finally discovering his existence. He calmly looked at the side of the pool, wanting to see how this little thing would react. Gu Xingyin dutifully played the role of a mermaid who only realized that she was in an unfamiliar environment after having fun. She stopped and looked around, seeming a little uneasy. Then, she saw a person standing on the shore. That was a human. She had heard about it from the elders in the clan. Chapter 853. Feng Cheng watched as the little mermaid swam towards him, but she didn't dare to get too close to him. She sized him up curiously at a distance of 2 meters. Judging from her appearance, she was still very young. She seemed to be only 15 or 16 years old. Looking at his reflection in her dark green eyes, Feng Cheng's mood suddenly improved for some reason. He knew that this mermaid wasn't as innocent and harmless as she looked. The description of mermaids in the ancient books didn't only mention their beautiful appearance, but also their powerful fighting ability. However, seeing the curiosity and surprise in the little mermaid's eyes, Feng Cheng didn't know where he got his confidence from. He felt that she wouldn't hurt him. So, he reached out his hand to Gu Xingyin. Some actions didn't require any verbal communication. Both parties could understand each other's meaning. For example, the kindness that Feng Cheng was showing to Gu Xingyin at this moment. The little mermaid's eyes were still vigilant. However, In this unfamiliar place, he was the first person to show kindness to her. She hesitated and slowly swam towards Feng Cheng. Then, she gave her hand to him. When the soft hand was placed in his palm, Feng Cheng felt his heart skip a beat. He exerted force and pulled the mermaid out of the water. Caught off guard, Gu Xingyin was so scared that she hugged the person in front of her. At this moment, the two of them were in an extremely intimate position. Gu Xingyin. What a deep trap. Feng Cheng was looking curiously at Gu Xingyin's clean clothes. It was actually not wet at all. Could this be the legendary mermaid? It was rumored that the mermaids produced by the mermaids were waterproof and spotless. It was the lightest and most precious material in the world. However, this thought only lingered in his mind for a moment before it was discarded. This was not the main point. He looked at the person in his arms. Her dark blue fishtail was the same color as her hair. It was the color of the sea. Feng Cheng didn't know why he suddenly carried her over. However, since he had already carried her, he took the opportunity to carry her back into the house. Can you talk? He put Gu Xingyin on the sofa and asked. The mermaid seemed to have never seen such a soft and bouncy thing before. She poked the sofa twice out of curiosity. When she heard the other party make a sound, her green eyes were filled with doubt and curiosity. Then, she opened her mouth and spoke a series of words that Feng Cheng couldn't understand. Feng Cheng, well, it seems that the first step is to start with the communication between the two sides. Are you hungry? Feng Cheng asked. He immediately realized that the other party wouldn't understand, so he raised his hand and made an eating gesture. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up and she nodded. Soon, food was delivered to the door. Feng Cheng didn't let Gu Xingyin do it herself. Instead, he held the spoon and slowly sat beside her to feed her. Occasionally, he would reach out his hand to wipe off the soup from her mouth. His actions were incomparably gentle. As an innocent young mermaid who had never seen the world of human beings, Gu Xingyin blushed cooperatively. So, her lover was flirting with her now. Gu Xingyin thought of this possibility and looked at Feng Cheng strangely. There was something wrong with lovers in this world. It was the first time they met, and they were of different species, but he was already flirting with her. Could it be that he was a womanizer? Chapter 854. This was a big deal. Gu Xingyin quickly asked the system, his identity and past. She heaved a sigh of relief after receiving the information. The head of the Feng family, the genius in the business world, and the emperor in the dark, was unexpectedly a clean and honest person. Of course, his clean and honest behavior was mainly because he had high standards. It was not that no one had ever thrown themselves at him, but this head of the Feng family did not like any of them. According to him, his woman must be one of the most outstanding women in the world. Even his group of childhood friends had always been curious about what kind of woman he would spend the rest of his life with in the end. Lowering his head to gently wipe Gu Xingyin's mouth with a wet towel, Feng Cheng's eyes were full of smiles. He had found her, hadn't he? He sent Gu Xingyin, who was obviously sleepy, back to the swimming pool. Gu Xingyin requested it herself. Feng Cheng made 2 phone calls. One was a renovation company. His original plan was messed up, and this time, he had to redesign the renovation style. The other was a subordinate. Gather information about mere people as soon as possible, the more complete the better. Send it to my email tomorrow morning. The subordinate who was hung up by his boss, mere people. What was the boss doing? But what the boss wanted to do was not something a small employee like him could control. He shrugged, looked at the time indicated by the clock, and remembered the time limit given by Feng Cheng, tomorrow morning. He resigned himself to his fate and let go of his girlfriend, got up and began to work. The next morning, Feng Cheng received a message from his subordinate. He finished the milk in his cup and flipped through it page by page. It was about merpeople's living habits, food, and, Feng Cheng's eyes focused, transforming into a human. Before a merperson reached adulthood, their body would start to heat up. Every merperson did not have a gender before they reached adulthood, but when they reached adulthood, their fishtail would split into 2 legs. This was also the only time in their life when they could choose their gender. The gender they chose would be the gender they would be in this life. Most merpeople chose their gender according to the gender of their lover. If they did not have a gender and were not willing to choose, they would automatically transform into a certain gender according to their physique. Feng Cheng sat at the table for a long time. He didn't go to work today. He was worried about leaving Gu Xingyin alone in the pool. What if someone accidentally came looking for him and saw her? What if she disappeared? What if, Feng Cheng had never thought that he would become so worried because of a person, even a mermaid. When he arrived at the swimming pool, he did not see Gu Xingyin. However, he knew where she was. There were surveillance cameras in the pool. He walked to the other corner of the pool and reached out to pat the outside of the huge clam shell. Soon, the shell cracked open just like the first time he saw it, revealing the little mermaid's sleepy face. Seeing that it was him, Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand habitually. Feng Cheng was stunned by her skillful movements, but he immediately bent down and picked her up. After washing up with Gu Xingyin, Feng Cheng decided to slowly communicate with her. Merpeople had high IQ, she just did not know how to speak human language. Gu Xingyin learned very quickly. To be precise, she already knew these things. She just needed to show them. As for being suspected, she was the only merperson left in the world. Whoever wanted to suspect her could do so. Chapter 855. Feng Cheng stayed at home for 3 days. This was an incredible thing for him, who had always been called a workaholic. 3 days later, the room he specially requested in the villa of the Feng family was finally built. He held Gu Xingyin to see her new room. Gu Xingyin was taken aback the moment he entered the room. The entire spacious room was almost completely occupied by a huge custom-made bathtub. The bathtub was dozens of square meters in size and could almost be regarded as a small swimming pool. There was no extra furniture, but there was no lack of sofa and TV. Looking at the mermaid's excited expression in his arms, Feng Cheng couldn't help but smile. He had now noticed that the mermaid's influence on him was getting bigger and bigger, but it was not a bad feeling. This was a treasure that belonged only to him. In 3 days, Gu Xingyin had already mastered some simple words. The first thing that came out of her mouth was, Feng Cheng. This was also a little selfish of Feng Cheng. He hoped that the first person this little mermaid saw in this world, the first sentence she said, and even the first person she thought of in her mind in the future would be him. When he went to work the next day, Feng Cheng habitually went to see Gu Xingyin, only to find that she had already woken up and was sitting on the sofa specially made for her. Seeing Feng Cheng coming over, Gu Xingyin shouted with some surprise, Feng Cheng. Feng Cheng saw her complacent and happy smile between her eyebrows and eyes, and was secretly surprised. At this time, Gu Xingyin said to him, Lian. Lian. Yang. Lian. Yang. Feng Cheng repeated these words over and over again before he suddenly realized something. He looked at Gu Xingyin with surprise, Is this your name? He spoke so fast that the little mermaid couldn't hear him clearly, and looked at him with confusion. Feng Cheng took a deep breath, slowed down his tone, and pointed at Gu Xingyin, You, Lian Yang. Then he pointed at himself, Feng Cheng. Now she understood. Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. Feng Cheng looked at Gu Xingyin's unguarded smile. Suddenly, he couldn't resist the impulse in his heart. He suddenly walked forward, clasped Gu Xingyin's waist, and kissed her fiercely. Obviously, the little merman had no experience in this area. When he was released, the merman's face was already red from holding his breath. Seeing her short breaths and red eyes, Fengqing took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to do something else. He reminded Gu Xingyin not to leave the room and then went to the company reluctantly. It had been 3 days, and he hadn't assigned any work in advance. There was probably a huge backlog of work. After Fengqing left, Gu Xingyin covered her face in embarrassment. In the end, she couldn't help but roll around on the spacious sofa. Why did he feel that his body and mind had become childish after becoming a mermaid? She was actually shy because of Fengqing's little tricks. They were clearly an old married couple. The system. It refused to accept this cold dog food. Not long after, Fengqing hurriedly finished the most important documents in the office, and couldn't help but turn on the computer. He looked at Gu Xingyin covering her face and rolling around on the sofa. He knew that she was shy, and couldn't help but laugh in his heart. His laugh was seen by Alice, the general assistant who came in to deliver the documents. Chapter 856. Alice maintained an elegant and decent smile and handed him the document in her hand. Chairman Feng, this is. After going out of the door, Alice let out a long sigh of relief and patted her hot cheeks hard. God, Chairman Feng just smiled, didn't he? Not only did he smile, but he also smiled so dotingly and coquettishly. Her maiden heart, which had been strictly guarded for many years and vowed not to touch Chairman Feng, almost jumped out of her chest. To be able to become the president's assistant, Alice had not only relied on her strong working ability, but more importantly, she was very clear-headed. She was very clear about her position and the position that Feng City wanted as the president's assistant. What Fengqing wanted was only a super-capable assistant. There were many people like that. But there were very few women who could control themselves and not be tempted by a man like Fengqing. He was tall and handsome, not belonging to professional models. He was proud of his chastity and didn't have any messy lovers or scandals. He was young and rich. No matter which one he was, many girls who dreamed of marrying into a rich and powerful family would try their best to get in. However, they didn't know that when they entered the Feng's company with such thoughts, they were doomed to have no good results. Alice, what are you doing? The manager of the marketing department saw the assistant of the chairman leaning against the wall and didn't know what she was doing. Alice changed back to her beautiful and intellectual appearance in a second and smiled perfectly. Manager Wang, I was just thinking about how to complete the task given by Chairman Feng just now. Manager Wang just asked casually. Seeing Alice walk away in high heels without looking sideways, he shook his head with puzzlement. Is it better to lean against the wall and think about the problem? In the afternoon. Fengqing had never felt that time became so difficult, especially when he saw Gu Xingyin learning to read with the presenter of the Children's Day program on TV. Lian Yang's serious look, well, he really wanted to bully her. When Lian Yang smiled, he really wanted to press her on the sofa and kiss her fiercely. Lian Yang, his mind was full of Lian Yang. Fengqing glanced at the time. There was only half an hour left before he got off work. After thinking about it for a while, Fengqing decided that there was nothing important to do, so he tidied up and went home after informing Alice that he was leaving. Everyone in the company was dumbfounded. Chairman Feng, who had always wanted to sleep in the company, had skipped work early. What happened? Alice, who was thought to be in the know by everyone, was almost driven mad by the people who were asking her about the whereabouts of the chairman, either explicitly or implicitly. What was the point of asking her? She wanted to know too. Wait a minute. Thinking back to Chairman Feng's indescribable smile in his office, could he be in love? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Alice took a sip of the slightly cold coffee, but she found that she couldn't stop her fiery gossipy heart. What kind of girl would Chairman Feng like? She must be beautiful. Alice came to this conclusion when she thought of those beautiful female stars who had offered themselves but were mercilessly rejected. After all, Chairman Feng was known for his high standards. His family background should be similar to Chairman Feng's, right? Alice had been in the workplace for so many years. She was no longer the young girl who believed in fairy tales about Cinderella and the prince. And, Alice suddenly came back to her senses. She shook her head. It was working hours now. If Chairman Feng were to find out that his assistant's head was filled with such thoughts during work hours, her year-end bonus would definitely be greatly reduced. Chapter 857. Fengcheng and Gu Xingyin lived a sweet life together. Although Fengcheng didn't show it, the people who were close to him could feel something was wrong. Fengcheng, don't tell me, you're in love. Li Zi looked suspiciously at the person who was holding the glass but didn't drink for a long time. These days, he always felt that something was wrong with Fengcheng. He always refused to come out to play. Today, he finally invited him out, but he was also absent-minded. However, he knew his childhood friend's taste. Originally, Li Zi was just asking casually. Unexpectedly, Fengcheng nodded after hesitating for a while. Damn! Li Zi slapped his thigh and suddenly became energetic. It's true. Come, come, come. Tell me, isn't sister-in-law super beautiful? I know your standards. Also, when did you two know each other? It's not nice to not tell me when you are in love. Li Zi blabbered on, but finally shut his mouth under Fengcheng's gaze. When the time is right, I will bring her out to meet you. Fengcheng only said this one sentence, and then drank the wine in his glass without hesitation. I didn't tell you this time. I will punish myself by drinking 3 glasses. Seeing Fengcheng like this, they knew that Fengcheng was serious this time. They became more and more curious about this sister-in-law. However, they knew how tight Fengcheng's mouth was. If he didn't want to say it, no one could pry open his mouth. After staying for half an hour, Fengcheng said that he wanted to go home. Thinking that he was a man with a family now, they expressed their understanding and let him go. When Fengcheng went back, Gu Xingyin was asking about Xiao Zi's current situation. Bai Gang sold the clam shell for 1 million yuan and immediately told Xiao Zi the news. Xiao Zi, who was about to break up, also shut up. She was going to leave her boyfriend hanging for the time being. Without the big gift of Lian Yang, Xiao Zi certainly didn't have something to open the door of the director's room. As expected, she missed the opportunity to get the role she wanted. She was still the same as before, staying indifferently in the entertainment industry. Gu Xingyin couldn't go out now, so she could only observe Xiao Zi's movements through the system. Fortunately, in the original plot, Xiao Zi's biggest golden finger was actually the Lian Yang that she had given to the director. Now that Gu Xingyin was in Feng City, Xiao Zi, who had no background, no support, and was not considered a top star, had no chance to make a name for herself. Gu Xingyin had originally planned to deal with Xiao Zi and that director on her own after she became an adult. However, when she saw Fengcheng push open the door and walk in, and saw the doting look on his face, she suddenly had an idea. She was 2 years away from adulthood. In 2 years, if nothing was done, too many unforeseen events could occur. She suspected that there would still be all kinds of problems in the plot to make Xiao Zi home rise. Gu Xingyin, who had seen the stubbornness of the storyline, was already on her guard. In that case, he could only ask Fengcheng for help. At night, when the two snuggled together to watch TV to pass the time, Gu Xingyin suddenly became emotional when she saw an advertisement. Fengcheng, who had been paying attention to Gu Xingyin all this time, naturally noticed this problem immediately. He saw an advertisement for an unknown drink on the TV. The endorser was a girl that he had never seen before. He guessed that she was an unknown star. What was wrong? Chapter 858. But the reaction of the person in his arms couldn't lie. Fengcheng hugged her slowly, gently stroking Lian Yang's smooth dark blue hair and comforting her softly. Gu Xingyin calmed down slowly, but there was still fear in her eyes. She pointed to the TV and said to Feng Cheng, "She is a bad person." Feng Cheng paused. It was the first time that he saw Lian Yang so agitated, even to a stranger. Had she seen her before? Impossible. Feng Cheng denied this idea. When Lian Yang just came out, her strangeness and curiosity about the surrounding environment couldn't lie at all. He was the first human being she saw. Then, why did she feel afraid? Who was she afraid of? Was it the star who endorsed the beverage? Or something else? Feng Cheng waited patiently. Soon, the TV commercial was played again. He sensitively noticed that Gu Xingyin's body shook and shivered. Feng Cheng felt a little distressed. From the first moment he saw the Little Mermaid, he felt that such a treasure from heaven should be cherished and loved. He gave her the best food and the best things, but he still didn't feel that he was good to her. He only hated that he couldn't treat her better. He liked to see her smile. Her smile was more dazzling than the brightest sunshine, which could warm his heart into a pool of water. But what had she experienced? Why did she have such a frightened reaction when she saw the TV commercial? Thinking of this, he suddenly turned Gu Xingyin in his arms, only to find that her big eyes were full of tears, but stubbornly refused to fall down. This was not Gu Xingyin acting. At the moment when she saw Xiao Zi, the instinctive disgust and rejection of this body made her unconsciously react like that. In those dark days, the thing that Lian Yang hoped most was that there would be someone who could save her. But there was no one. So, feeling Feng Cheng's cherishing and love, she instinctively couldn't control her tears. Looking at Gu Xingyin like this, Feng Cheng only felt that the softest part of his heart was pricked by a needle, and the pain was unbearable. He held her in his arms, put his forehead against hers, and comforted her softly, "Don't be afraid, Lian Yang. Feng Cheng is here. No one can hurt you. Don't be afraid." The tears that had been condensed in Gu Xingyin's eyes finally fell down. The moment the transparent water droplets touched the air, they turned into round and smooth beads, rustling and falling on Feng Cheng's clothes. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but reach out and put her arms around Feng Cheng's back. The man's scent made her feel at ease. The person in his arms finally calmed down. Feng Cheng stopped what he was doing and leaned over to take a look. The person in his arms had already fallen asleep. He smiled helplessly and looked at the pearls on his clothes. The pearls as big as a thumb, they were absolutely the best pearls. The mermaid's tears were actually real. But as long as he thought that these pearls were made by Lian Yang's tears, Feng Cheng couldn't feel happy. His Lian Yang should be happy every day and be spoiled by him all her life. Tears were not suitable for her. He put the pearls into his pocket, picked up Gu Xingyin, and was about to put her back into the pool. Unexpectedly, just when he was about to let go, Gu Xingyin woke up with a start. Chapter 859. Feng Cheng couldn't help but laugh. He asked softly, "Is it fun?" Gu Xingyin had already given up on trying to cure herself. She said honestly, "It's fun. It's all." Feng Cheng sent. "I like it very much." Feng Cheng's eyes suddenly darkened. He felt that if he stayed any longer, he might have to go to the bathroom again. Feng Cheng looked deeply at the mermaid who was lying on the bed in a daze. Feng Cheng had a headache. 2 years, these days were a bit hard to bear. Gu Xingyin, who secretly teased her lover and felt that she had won a round, was carried into her room in a good mood. Mermaid still belonged to the water. Even if she could stay in an environment without water for a few days, it was undeniable that she felt most comfortable in water. "Remember to eat obediently. If I find that you haven't eaten when I come back at night, I will punish you," Feng Cheng said to her, fiercely. Gu Xingyin nodded with bright eyes. Was it the punishment from last time? Last time, when Feng Cheng came home and found that she had been learning the human language and playing with water all day without eating, he fiercely pressed the mermaid onto the sofa and punished her. Thinking of this, Gu Xingyin blushed a little. Seeing the mermaid's expression, Feng Cheng knew what she was thinking. Mermaids were always so straightforward about their desires. He had a headache. It was a good thing to have such a sensible lover, but it was too cruel for a man to only be able to look and not eat. He gloomily bit Gu Xingyin's mouth and said fiercely, "If you don't eat properly, you are not allowed to sleep with me." Hearing this, Gu Xingyin's expression immediately became serious. "I promise, to eat on time." Feng Cheng couldn't help but press her down and kiss her fiercely before getting up and leaving. The system that pretended to not exist the whole time, damn it, I want to apply for a public display of affection. Gu Xingyin. System, be good, don't mess around. Feng Cheng walked out of the door and dialed a number. Yes, investigate a person who is endorsing that XX drink. Yes, a female celebrity. Send all her information to my email. The other party acted quickly. By the time Feng Cheng arrived at the company, there was already a document in his mailbox. Feng Cheng frowned as he read the content: Xiao Zi, female, 23 years old, an artist under Wentian Entertainment. Why did Lian Yang have such a big reaction when she saw it? It was just an ordinary document. Even though he had his doubts, Feng Cheng did not intend to ask Gu Xingyin about it. In his opinion, Lian Yang's painful look only needed to appear once. Since Lian Yang saw her in so much pain, then, it was better not to let her appear in front of her again. Feng Cheng thought coldly. His gentleness was all for one person. He made a call to the man. The man asked cautiously, "Chairman Feng, have you taken a fancy to that female artist?" It wasn't like this hadn't happened before. Maybe the sponsor had taken a liking to the other party in the advertisement. If that was the case, then Xiao Zi was really lucky. Feng Cheng interrupted him in disgust, "Don't let me see her on any screen again." The man was speechless. It seemed that Xiao Zi was not favored by Chairman Feng, but was hated by Chairman Feng. He didn't know what this female artist had done to make such a big shot call to ban her. He didn't know that Xiao Zi's fate had been changed because of one sentence from a mermaid that Feng Cheng cherished. Chapter 860. What? Xiao Zi listened to her agent in disbelief. Change her role. The second female lead role in this TV series was given to her by the assistant director's wife with Bai Gang's money and a high-quality jade necklace. Xiao Zi was counting on this role to turn her career around. Xiao Zi didn't believe it. "I'm going to call the director." The agent looked at his artist with some pity. He had many artists under him, and Xiao Zi wasn't very outstanding. He didn't know how she got this role this time, but the agent was happy in his heart. When his artist made a name for herself, he could also get a lot of benefits as an agent. However, he just received a call from the director. The other party didn't say it directly, but vaguely pointed out that it wasn't that they didn't want to use Xiao Zi, but that there was someone above who didn't want Xiao Zi to play this role. And that person was someone the crew and investors couldn't afford to offend. The agent knew that someone wanted to ban Xiao Zi. An artist like her would most likely be ruined in the future. Seeing that they were familiar with each other, he reminded her, "Think about it carefully. Did you offend someone recently?" That was all he had to say. After the agent left, Xiao Zi stood there in a daze. What did he mean just now? Who did she offend? Was someone secretly targeting her? Xiao Zi was at a loss and felt wronged. She knew that she had no backing or background. She had always been kind to others in this circle. She would always call everyone sister. Who would target her? She thought about it and called the assistant director. As soon as the call was connected, she couldn't wait to ask, "Director Lin, I'm Xiao Zi." The role from before. Before she could finish speaking, the assistant director on the other side spoke in a gentle tone. He said cheerfully, "Oh, it's Xiao Zi. What's the matter?" I'm sorry, I'm at home now. There's a guest at home. How about I call you later?" Before Xiao Zi could say anything, the phone was hung up. "Call me later." Xiao Zi knew that there would be no more calls. Even if she called now, the other party's phone wouldn't go through. She slid weakly into the chair. She was still puzzled. Who on earth would target a small artist like me? She would never get the answer to this question. Recently, there was a rumor going around the headquarters of the Feng organization. Their chairman, Feng Cheng, might be in a relationship. Why? The original workaholic began to get off work on time every day, not staying for even a second longer. She turned down all the meaningless fun gatherings and rushed home after work every day. If the above two didn't count, then what about the chairman, who treated his work seriously and coldly every day, smiling proudly during work? There was another piece of news that came from the upper management of the company. One day, during a meeting, the chairman's personal phone rang. Usually, the chairman would hang up on such calls and wait until the meeting was over before calling back. But this time, when Fengcheng saw the caller ID, his expression changed drastically. He made a gesture and left his seat. Everyone saw that Fengcheng's face was filled with surprise and joy as soon as he stood up. Then, the door of the meeting room was closed, blocking out Chairman Feng's voice. The people in the meeting room started to discuss in low voices. Chapter 861. Feng Cheng was really surprised. His expression had changed because the call had come from his villa. Since Gu Xingyin appeared in his house, he had never invited anyone to his house to prevent her from being found out. How could Feng Cheng not be worried when someone called him from his villa's landline? If some bad guys came to his house, fortunately, the next moment, a familiar light voice came from the phone, Feng Cheng. Feng Cheng breathed a sigh of relief and smiled unconsciously. "Lian Yang, it's you." He felt a little surprised because he hadn't taught Gu Xingyin how to make a phone call. "Why did you call me?" he asked. Gu Xingyin snickered and answered, "On TV." She was now able to speak fluently in daily conversations. Feng Cheng understood that she must have seen him making a phone call on TV. But how did she know his number? Before Feng Cheng could ask this question, he was sweetened by her sweet words. "On TV, it said that when I miss you, I should call." System. Watching the host flirting with men every day, it felt so tired. Feng Cheng suddenly heard this sentence and felt as sweet as honey in his heart. He said softly, "I miss Lian Yang too." An assistant in the corridor was delivering documents to the meeting room. Seeing the gentle and doting smile on the chairman's face, she almost stepped on her own foot with her high heels. Just now, was that their chairman? The serious and self-restrained Chairman Feng? Was it because she worked too late yesterday that she was hallucinating? The assistant entered the meeting room in a daze and distributed documents to everyone. The manager of the marketing department saw her and joked to the manager of the planning department beside him, "The newcomer in your department doesn't seem to be in good spirits. I heard that your department works overtime every day." The manager of the planning department looked at his assistant and wondered if she had worked too much overtime recently. He thought for a while and decided to give his assistant a holiday in 2 days. The assistant who went out in a daze didn't expect that she would get a good holiday out of misfortune. Feng Cheng finally remembered that he had a company's monthly summary meeting. He hung up the phone reluctantly and walked into the meeting room with a happy face. Everyone in the meeting room thought, "Who would believe that you're not in a relationship?" However, Feng Cheng, who had resumed his work, only said, "Continue." Everyone put away their gossipy thoughts and began to report their department's performance during this period. When the meeting was over, everyone got up and left except for Fengcheng. As the chairman's assistant, Alice stepped forward and asked, "Chairman Feng, is there anything else?" Fengcheng shook his head and said calmly, "You go out first. I need to calm down and think." Alice understood. Chairman Feng must be thinking about the direction of the company's development in the second half of the year again. Outsiders only saw the glamour of the company's executives, but the hard work behind their backs was always ignored. Chairman Feng didn't have it easy. Alice sighed as she thoughtfully closed the door of the conference room for Fengcheng. After a while, Chairman Feng, who is thinking about the direction of the company's development in the second half of the year, finally mutters, "I wonder if Lianyang likes the seafood banquet in Fuyan residence." Chapter 862. When Fengcheng came home from work, he brought Gu Xingyin a seafood feast in Fuyan house, which he had been thinking about for a long time, and a lady's mobile phone of the same model as his. While watching Gu Xingyin eat, he handed the phone to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin took the phone and looked at it. The screensaver was Fengcheng's handsome profile. Gu Xingyin. This sense of presence is good. But she was still very happy that they were using couples' mobile phones. The SIM card was already installed in it, and there was only one number in the contact column. Fengcheng looked at Gu Xingyin, who was holding the phone happily, and suddenly asked, "Lianyang, do you want to go out and play?" Gu Xingyin looked up, seeming to not understand why he asked this. Fengcheng remembered that when he was in the office, he would occasionally see Lianyang looking at the sea on TV with a yearning look. Every time, he would remember that Lianyang was not an ordinary human being, but a mermaid who belonged to the sea. When she became an adult and could change her shape freely, she could choose to go anywhere, especially the sea which mermaids loved the most. Fengcheng even thought that if Lianyang could move freely, would she leave him? Would she go back to her favorite sea? Fengcheng did not dare to think about such a possibility. He even thought that if Lianyang chose to leave him, how would he react? If it was in the past, according to his temper, he would probably break this person's legs and lock her beside him. But this was Lianyang. Even when he saw her cry, he would feel so sorry for Lianyang. He could not bear to see her sad and hurt her. He did not know what he would choose, so he asked this question. He wanted to see what Lianyang would choose. Fengcheng hid his expression so well that even Gu Xingyin, who thought she knew him very well, could not see his thoughts at this moment. Of course she wanted to go out and play. No matter a mermaid or a normal human being, after being cooped up in the same room for several months, anyone would want to go out. Therefore, she nodded without hesitation. Fengcheng's expression darkened, and he asked her where she wanted to go. Gu Xingyin said without hesitation that she wanted to go to the sea. Although the pool was very comfortable, it didn't make her feel carefree. Mermen belonged to the sea after all. Fengcheng held back for a long time before he finally swallowed back the words that were on the tip of his tongue. "Will you come back when you reach the ocean?" He liked her so much, and he could feel Lianyang's closeness and dependence on him, so he was willing to believe her. It was not easy for Gu Xingyin to go out and have fun. Confidentiality measures need to be done very well. Fengcheng believed that if the news that there was a mermaid in his family was spread out, even he might not be able to protect Lianyang. He also knew that when Lianyang reached adulthood, she could transform into a human form and grow a pair of legs. That would be the safest time. But he couldn't bear to let her lose her freedom for so long. The Feng family head was ruthless and decisive. All of his gentleness were focused on one person. After more than half a month of preparation, Fengcheng finally arranged the itinerary. On the night before leaving, Fengcheng held Gu Xingyin very tightly, as if he was afraid that the person in his arms would disappear if he let go. He looked at the sleeping face of the person in his arms, and called Lian Yang in a low voice, with infinite affection. Chapter 863. The next day, Gu Xingyin was carried onto the family's private plane by Feng Cheng. She was wrapped up tightly from head to toe, and the pilot didn't dare to look at her because of Feng Cheng's imposing manner. He could only sigh inwardly at how much the family had treasured the person in his arms. Their destination this time was a small island in the Pacific Ocean, a private beach bought by Feng Cheng a long time ago. Only in a place like this, he didn't have to worry about Lian Yang being seen. Feng Cheng obviously wanted to spend some alone time with the two of them. The pilot tactfully left the island, leaving the two of them alone. As soon as Gu Xingyin saw the sparkling sea, a desire emerged from her body. She wanted to go into the water. She couldn't walk with her fishtail, so she looked at Feng Cheng with longing eyes. Feng Cheng paused when he saw her eyes. After a second of silence, he said, "Take a break first, I'll go cook, and we'll come to the beach after lunch, okay?" Gu Xingyin didn't miss the hesitation on her face, and she was a little confused. It was just letting her play in the water, what was there to hesitate about? She hadn't been in the water for a long time, so she wasn't in a hurry. Gu Xingyin certainly wasn't in a hurry. Feng Cheng's heart softened when he saw that she listened to his suggestion obediently. He put her on the sofa of the seaside villa, and turned to go into the kitchen. The things in the kitchen were all ready-made. After confirming that they were going to play here, he ordered the servants to prepare all the daily necessities. Gu Xingyin played a game on her phone, and complained to the system while waiting for lunch. "Tell me, as a mermaid, what's the use of having the top student talent?" The system replied with 2 words, random. Gu Xingyin was speechless. The skill she drew in this world was Qinyu's top student talent. As a mermaid, she didn't need to go to school, so what was the use of being a top student? The system said again, outside of the world's ability limit, what you draw depends on the host's luck. Gu Xingyin. She swore she heard the system's unfinished words. Gu Xingyin said tiredly, "System, I don't think you're as cute as before." The system was even more exhausted. "Ah. Maybe it's because I've eaten too much dog food. Now, when I see people showing off their love, I want to burn them to death." Gu Xingyin. She decided to shut up and stop provoking the system. Reality proved that the academic genius attribute was still useful. For example, in the puzzle game that Gu Xingyin was playing, she was breaking the record again and again. After Gu Xingyin broke her own record, lunch was finally ready in Feng City. It was simple spaghetti, but Feng Cheng made it extra exquisite. Gu Xingyin sighed with emotion that her lover was indeed an all-around good lover. After admiring the artistic plate presentation, she finally put the food into her mouth with satisfaction. She was even more satisfied with the delicious taste in her mouth. Feng Cheng didn't eat a single bite. He only focused on watching the mermaid happily eat her lunch. Gu Xingyin only realized that something was wrong halfway through the meal. It seemed that Feng Cheng's mood had been a bit off the whole time. She put down the cutlery in her hand and asked, "Feng Cheng, what's wrong with you?" Although Feng Cheng still looked at her lovingly, there was a trace of uneasiness and forbearance in the depths of his eyes. What was he uneasy about? Gu Xingyin thought about what had happened during this period of time, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry in her heart. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.